Theresa. Bride's Dock on Portum Island, Book 2. Written by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Bethany Kay. Prologue. Cassandra Hall, the matchmaker on Portum Island, glanced at the real estate that she had been assigned. It wasn't so bad. The office was probably the smallest space, which was stuffed in a 10-story office building. To Lance's chagrin, they had been placed on the top floor in a building where the elevator had a reputation for breaking down. But that wasn't the issue that the resident matchmaker had with her office. The room consisted of 2 desks and a couple of plush chairs for visitors. There wasn't an area where the samples and applications could be locked away. Nope. Cassandra had settled for storing them in the filing cabinet, which had a flimsy padlock. There were over 90 samples to test and 2 men to meet with. The bell to the office rang, and Cassandra pressed the button on her desk that unlocked the door. To her relief, her first appointment, Thomas Daly, strolled in, his stiff posture telling her that this was going to be one awkward meeting. But she forced herself to stand and made sure to greet the man with a friendly smile and a firm handshake. "Mr. Daly, please sit," Cassandra insisted. He continued to stand, his dark eyes boring into hers. It took everything for Cassandra not to shift on her feet. "Once I marry the woman, am I contractually obligated to keep her?" he demanded. "Mr. Daly, we hope to assist you with having a happy marriage. We hope that not keeping your bride shouldn't be an option. Please sit so that I can take some notes on what you are looking for," Cassandra instructed as she sat on her office chair and opened up a template on her computer. "You should include that in the contract," Mr. Daly suggested, as he dusted off the plush chair in front of her desk before settling into it. "Right. I'll think about it. So, Mr. Daly, do you have an age preference?" "What ages are women most fertile?" he inquired. "You shouldn't focus on that. Portum Island has—" "That's what I want. I need someone that will bear and raise my children." "Mr. Daly, don't you want to be happy with your wife?" Cassandra asked, her heart sinking. She had a feeling that some of the men on her list would only be looking to sire heirs, but something about Mr. Daly seemed defeated. It was in the way that his shoulders stiffened when Cassandra made eye contact with him. "Mr. Daly, what are some of your hobbies?" the matchmaker asked after her client refused to answer her last question. "I enjoy reading business biographies, watching game shows, building furniture, and swimming," he listed. Now that she could work with. Behind the tough exterior was a creative man. "What kind of food do you like?" she asked Mr. Daly. "I'll eat anything as long as it is edible. Food should only be viewed as a means of sustenance. You eat to live," he lectured. It was obvious that the idea involving food had been beaten into him. A thought bloomed in Cassandra's mind. She would make it her mission to find Thomas Daly a bright light, a woman that would bring out his true personality. The rest of the questions were promptly answered, and he left her office. Cassandra quickly rushed to the cabinet and fished out the package that had caught her eye. It had come with the most touching of letters. She yanked the vial of the young woman's DNA sample and deposited the rest of the contents on her desk. With her heart in her throat, Cassandra strolled out of the office. Relieved that the door would lock behind her, she next went to the elevator, which opened with a ding. A woman carrying a briefcase rushed out, and Cassandra took the opportunity to hurry into the elevator before someone called it to another floor. She pressed the button for the first floor, and thankfully the slow, decrepit machine took her safely down to the lobby. The matchmaker waved at the people that sat in the general waiting room before making her way out of the building. The familiar blast of heat brought a smile to her face. Cassandra ran toward the beach, where the barrier was easiest to reach. She passed couples who were on afternoon strolls, and the sight only empowered her. Thomas Daly would be one part of a strolling couple. The letter that she read quickly came to mind. Dear Cassandra, I can't stand questionnaires, so some of the answers are blank, because seriously, I'm the type that expresses herself. My name is Theresa McDonald, but most people call me Tessa. Theresa seems so stuffy and proper. My mother wanted me to be a cotillion girl. I'm not from the South or anything. Well, I could have been if Mom hadn't left my father for a famous tennis player who lives in Europe. I only suffer the agony of visiting her on special occasions. My father, on the other hand, is a moron. He is marrying Gail, a stuck-up gold digger who's trying to cut me out of the will. Yeah, I'm serious. I guess Gail told my father that if he really loved her, she should be entitled to everything if they should ever be parted. Since my father has the love bug, why not start over? I didn't go to a 4-year college. I decided to babysit my dad instead. But I did get a certification in massage therapy. That pissed off my mother. But I kind of like massage therapy because I have the chance to help people, even if it is only for an hour. I am definitely not smart enough to be a doctor, so I picked the second best thing. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that I want to start over. If you can actually find me a man, that is, I hope you give me someone stable. He doesn't have to be predictable, just someone I can rely on. Oh, and Cassandra, please let the guy not be an atrocious singer. It would seem that my father is not only stupid, but lost his sense of pitch. You're a hopeful client, Tessa. Cassandra had agonized over that letter for a couple of days. She hadn't been sure that someone so rebellious would be a good fit for Portum Island, but then she had her meeting with Thomas Daly. Cassandra made it to the beach and pulled the DNA sample from the kid. Without hesitation, she tossed the sample up at the clear blue sky. The sample immediately vanished, which was a favorable reaction. Had the barrier rejected Tessa's sample, the barrier would have emitted a sound, similar to the one made when a balloon popped. Good, Cassandra thought. Thomas was going to get the bride meant for him. Chapter 1. Tessa opened her bloodshot eyes at the sound of the horrible screeching. She sat up and groaned. At first, Tessa had assumed that Gail found the mouse that she had placed in her shoe. But nope, the woman was practicing. She heard the sound of her future stepmother plucking on the piano. Well, let's face it, she wasn't getting any sleep. Tessa would have told her father, but wanted to be spared from his predictable response. Theresa, if you can't share the same living space as Gail, then move out. Tessa glanced at the phone that was resting on her nightstand. It was 9:30 a.m., an hour before her alarm was set to ring. That gold-digging thought was going to pay for this. She got out of her queen-size bed, not bothering to fix it. What was the point? She'd only curl back up in the blankets after Gail was dealt with. She took her phone with her in case her most drastic option called. Tessa hated to admit it, but she didn't have many friends. It was difficult having a personality that rubbed people the wrong way. That meant the couch surfing would not be a viable option. Tessa stepped out of her room and walked barefoot on the hard wood. She missed the carpet that Gail had insisted on removing a week ago. Tessa hated putting on shoes. But damn was the hardwood cold. She stomped down the marble staircase and straight into the music room. Tessa's aching eyes landed on Gail, a brunette, who insisted on playing the baby grand piano while singing off-key. You are a good piano player, but a terrible singer, Tessa grudgingly noted. Theresa, Gail whined as she stood, abandoning the piano. Your father won't be happy with you. First you put a mouse in my boots. Then you tampered with my shampoo and... Nope, That's not my style. I didn't touch your hair products. Tessa interrupted, wanting to clear the air. Don't cut me off, Theresa. It's rude. You aren't getting rid of me. Your father loves me. Now how do you think he's going to react when he hears that you've barged in on my sanctuary? Gail demanded in a condescending tone. Don't pull out her extensions no matter how tempting it is, Tessa thought to herself. He would be thankful that I stopped all of the horrible singing? Tessa quipped. Gail's face turned red, and she appeared as if she could explode from the anger. The gold digger's hand rose, as if she was going to deliver a backhand to her future stepdaughter. Tessa would have respected Gail if she had the courage to hit her, but that wasn't what Gail did. Nope. She picked up the purse that was resting on the piano bench and dug through it. She pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of Tessa. Hey, you got my bad side, Tessa complained, which made the gold digger scowl at her. Moments later, Tessa's phone vibrated in her hand. The caller ID announced that it was her father. Tessa hit answer, a smart remark hanging on the tip of her tongue, but he spoke first. You have a week, he nearly shouted. A week? A week for what? Tessa asked, genuinely confused. You have a week to get the hell out of my house. I am so sick of your behavior, Theresa. It's time for you to grow up, her father hotly said. I am not the only one, Dad. At least I'm not choosing a stranger over my own blood. Dad, come on. She's 25 years old. What do you think she wants from a 55-year-old? Tessa shot back. Gail told me that you would say something like that. Look, Theresa, you want to make sure that you are the only person I spend my money on. For that purpose alone, you get nothing. He shouted, It's time that you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. A week, Theresa. That's all I'm giving you. With shaking fingers, Tessa hung up on her father. Then she glared at a grinning Gail. I hope you know that Dad is going to get sick of you eventually, she warned. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans to make. It must hurt, Theresa. He's willing to take you out of his will, and he's known you for years. Maybe that just proves that you're a bad person. No. It just proves that my father likes chasing skirts more than he likes being a father, Tessa snapped before leaving the room. She stormed up the marble staircase and went into the room that she had since her father bought this mansion 5 years ago. She tossed herself onto her bed and pulled the comforter over her. Tessa would take a nap, then search for other living accommodations. She wasn't stupid. There was quite a bit of cash hidden under her mattress for this very eventuality. She just couldn't believe that Gail found a way into her gullible father's heart. What made her different from the parade of women that Tessa had managed to scare off? How had she failed to protect her father? She knew that Gail would get a large portion of her father's estate if he kicked the bucket while they were together. But Tessa hadn't imagined that she would be written out of the will. Her thoughts were interrupted by the vibrating of her phone. Tessa saw a number that she didn't recognize on the caller ID. If it was a robocall, she would make the caller's life miserable. Tessa clicked answer and waited to hear the voice on the other line. Hello, can I please speak to Tessa McDonald? A gentle voice asked. Is this a reporter? Tessa demanded. Sometimes magazines and newspapers would bother her when her father's publicist didn't manage to deter them. No. This is Cassandra Hall? Who? Tessa questioned. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. Did we meet at a party? This is Tessa McDonald, right? Who wants to know? Tessa demanded. Cassandra. From Portum mail-order brides? Cassandra replied. Oh. Right. Sorry about that. Did you find me a guy? Tessa asked, intrigued. Yes. His name is Thomas Daly. Would you be okay with leaving for Florida on Saturday? Cassandra asked. Damn, woman, it's Thursday. You don't exactly give the mail-order brides time to chicken out, do you? Tessa asked. We are chartering a jet for 2 young ladies in the area, and figured that we could extend the offer to you, Cassandra calmly explained. Hell yeah. My father just kicked me out and you guys were my last hope, so is my man hot? Tessa wondered. No, wait, he's probably a geek. That's cool too. I love learning new things. You will be wonderful to have here, Cassandra said, her chuckle making Tessa smirk. At least someone appreciates my personality, Tessa said before pumping one of her fists in the air. Just text me the details. I'm guessing I don't need any of my winter clothes, right? Tessa asked. No, definitely not, Cassandra giggled. Cool. Well, this day is getting better, Tessa decided. I'm glad to hear it. I'll text you the details, Cassandra said. Okay, have a nice day, Tessa said before hanging up. This was going to be interesting. She got out of bed and opened her walk-in closet. Tessa had a lot of long-sleeved graphic tees. She selected one of her suitcases and began the tedious task of packing. Tessa rolled the first suitcase out of her closet. She blinked in surprise when she spotted Gail standing in the doorway. Your father thought that you would throw a temper tantrum about us taking the money under your bed, but it looks like we were both wrong, she noted. Damn, her father was a lot smarter than she gave him credit for. Packing already? Yep, I'll be out of here in 2 days, Tessa fired back. You do know that your father canceled your debit and credit cards, right? Gail gleefully asked. So, I won't need his money, Tessa said, though she was a bit worried. She wanted to be able to escape if Thomas Daly ended up being a nut job. It would look like she wouldn't have such a luxury. Tessa sighed. For the next 2 days, this is still my room. Can you leave? Tessa snapped. Gail smirked. You lost, Tessa. Just face it. It was never about winning or losing. All I ever wanted was to protect my ungrateful father from people like you, Tessa said, exhaustion pulling at her. Gail didn't have a response to Tessa's candor, probably because she was full of crap. Tessa wasn't surprised when the gold digger strolled out of the room and slammed the door shut. Chapter 2. Tessa, where are you going? Tessa's father asked as she was lugging a suitcase onto the porch. Her father was sitting on one of the plush porch chairs, sipping a cup of coffee. His fiancée was sitting beside him, sipping a mimosa, probably because she couldn't stand his company sober. A car is picking me up in 10 minutes. I'm already running late? Since your wonderful wife-to-be told the maids not to assist me, Tessa griped before rushing back into the house. Upon reaching her room, Tessa eyed the other 2 suitcases with hatred. There had to be a more efficient way of getting the bags down the staircase. After a moment of pondering, she determined that the only way that this could go faster is if she had strong men to carry the bags for her. Since that wasn't an option, she grabbed the handle of yet another overstuffed suitcase. When all of Tessa's bags were resting on the porch steps, she glanced past the security gate. She had told Tony the butler that a car was coming to pick her up. He promised that he would let the car gain entrance. Tessa assessed the plush lawn and wondered when she was going to see it again. Tessa, your father asked you a question, Gail shouted. Where are you going? To Florida, Tessa responded. On a vacation? Jack, I thought that you canceled her credit card, Gail said, accusation in her tone. Baby, I promised that I'd start taking my parenting seriously. I did cancel her credit cards. Tessa, did you ask your mother for money? Her father demanded. Tessa stared at her unattractive father with his wrinkly skin, bright red hair, and beady gray eyes, and sighed. Well, Dad, I am getting married. You are so happy with Gail that I thought, why not? Tessa sarcastically responded. You aren't serious, Tessa. Her father tried to argue. You are too rebellious for something as confining as marriage. The fact that her father thought that marriage was confining told Tessa that his relationship wouldn't last long. Nope. Thomas Daly and I will be married by sunset, she announced with glee. I'm your father. I should be there. I should walk you down the aisle. I shouldn't meet this guy, Tessa. You're being ridiculous. I can... As ridiculous as you? Dad, look, you made it clear you don't want me around. I'm going to get married and start a family of my own, Tessa said, desiring to hurt her father. Who knew if her marriage to Thomas Daly would last? She just needed an escape to a town where no one knew of her lineage. Tessa, we'll believe it when you send us the marriage license, Gail huffed. Honey, don't let her manipulate us. Her father nodded. Have fun in Florida? I will tell your mother not to lend you any money, her father said before a black luxury SUV made its way up the winding driveway. Sweet, her ride was there. Tessa grinned. Dad, have a nice life with Gail. Call me once you are tired of her. I may consider forgiving you, Tessa said as a man with a suit exited the vehicle. Tessa McDonald? He asked. That would be me, Tessa exclaimed, nerves starting to twist her stomach. She helped the man dump the suitcases into the trunk, despite his protests. Then she blew her father a kiss and hopped into the back seat, sadness nearly consuming her heart. Her father had chosen a woman over her. And now she'd agreed to marry a man just for temporary escape. Did she have much choice? Her father stripped away all of her money and tossed her out on her ass. Tessa wasn't sure if things would work with Thomas Daly, but she would try. Tessa was determined to have a good attitude about the experience, even if she felt betrayed by her pathetic, hormone-driven father. It would figure that he'd go through his midlife crisis when a venomous snake like Gail Piper was in his life. Who cares? Tessa thought. It wasn't like her father was thinking about her. Tessa strolled onto the private jet, forcing excitement to radiate on her face. She glanced at the passengers and immediately recognized her former hairdresser, Esperanza. The woman looked tired and defeated. Tessa was nosy as hell and was dying to ask her what happened. But then a short woman with dark hair and golden brown skin caught her eye. She looked dirty, as if she hadn't seen a shower in a few days. Tessa had to admit that the woman kind of smelled ripe as well, but she was polite enough not to say so. Instead, she eyed the gorgeous dark-skinned woman with the curves. That must be Cassandra, Tessa thought before smiling at Esperanza. Esperanza, get out of here! You're doing this mail-order bride thing too? Tessa asked, unable to hide her astonishment. And you must be Tessa McDonald, the well-dressed woman beside Esperanza noted. I'm Cassandra. It's nice to meet you, Tessa said as she braved sitting beside the smelly woman. The fear in the woman's eyes struck a nerve. Perhaps Tessa would make the quiet little thing her pet project. I'm Tessa, she said, grinning at her. I'm Julia. How are you today? She asked the question as if she was unused to having a casual conversation. Freaking fantastic for someone that's about to marry a stranger, Tessa said, her exuberance making Julia shift uncomfortably in her seat. Tessa figured that she'd do some investigating as soon as the pilot got them into the air. "So you and Tessa know each other?" Cassandra asked a couple of minutes after takeoff. "Yes, she used to be one of my customers. I gave her a trim a couple of weeks ago," Esperanza responded. "I see," Cassandra said. "So what part of Florida are we going to?" Tessa asked, hating when she was ignored. It was exhausting to maintain the happiness that she most definitely didn't feel. "We're going to an island off the coast of Florida," Cassandra said. "Oh, hell no. Was this gorgeous diva trying to avoid the question?" Tessa asked herself. "I know, that's what you told me on the phone. I just want to know what island we're going to," Tessa said, insistent. "Hold up, what part of Florida are we going to?" Esperanza cautiously asked. "We are landing on a private airstrip in Key West," Cassandra said. "Then we are taking a boat to Portum Island." "Portum Island," Julia squeaked. "There is no such thing." "It is an island," Cassandra protested. "Trust me, I grew up there. Wait until you see it for yourself." "Great," Tessa squealed, though she didn't think that anyone understood that she was being sarcastic. "I can't wait to see this island." She would check out this island, but if things looked shady, Tessa promised herself that she would get the hell out of there. After that awkwardness, the subject was dropped. For the most part, Tessa stayed silent. She was startled when Julia spoke. "What do you think our husbands will be like?" Julia softly asked Tessa. The fear in Julia's eyes made Tessa stiffen. "Look, Julia, your husband will be plenty nice to you," she told the woman. "If he isn't, I'll remove his balls and feed them to him," Tessa silently told herself. Julia shot Tessa a hopeful expression. "I hope that where we're going has a lot of food," Julia said. Tessa giggled and relaxed into her seat. One way or another, she was going to make sure that all was well. This was the life. Tessa was relaxing on the deck of a freaking yacht with the women that she had flown with. Dana, the pilot, and her sister chose to assist the owner of the yacht. Julia was currently stuffing her face with a tuna sandwich that smelled nearly as bad as she did. Tessa hated the smell of fish, but she'd endure it for her new friend. But something was nagging at her. "So why aren't there any men on the yacht?" Tessa bluntly asked. She might as well put it out there. "So Portum Island is a real place, but the island is picky. Most people can't even enter the island. That's why when we created the mail-order bride business, we included the DNA sample as a requirement. Unfortunately, the island rejects people. You'll see what I mean in a moment." Tessa had to see what would happen. She'd prove Cassandra wrong. Damn it, an island couldn't be picky. "Get ready, you'll feel the static electricity in a second." Moments later, the air grew warmer, and Tessa felt static electricity brush against her skin, as if someone had accidentally shocked her. WTF, was the crazy broad doing this to her? And why was Julia finishing her sandwich as if she didn't have a care in the world? Tessa was going to curse, but then darkness surrounded the yacht. Tessa and Julia let out high-pitched screams. What the hell was going on? The dark void thankfully lasted for a moment. Then the sky appeared again, and in the distance was an island. "I'll be damned. The broad wasn't crazy after all," Tessa told herself as her eyes began roaming what she could see of her new home. Chapter 3. Thomas Daly peered around at his immaculate home. Every corner was swept and vacuumed, and the monochrome furniture was resting in the correct position. He had black furniture, because black was a sensible color. His walls were all painted and off-white. There was a prepared meal resting in the center of his dining room table. Miss McDonald would be hungry. Thomas assumed that Dana didn't keep a fully stocked kitchen on her plane. He bit his lip, wondering if the gray suit was appealing. He matched it with a purple tie that his brother Trip bought him last Christmas. Thomas preferred black ties but wanted to have a splash of color on him. Sally, his sister-in-law, always commented that women were drawn to colors. When Thomas's doorbell rang, he marched into the mudroom and opened the door to see his older brother, Trip, standing in front of him. "Hey, Tommy, what are y'all dressed up for?" Trip asked as he smiled widely at him. He hadn't told his overbearing family of the bride that he was sending for. Thomas glanced at his watch and realized that his bride was set to arrive at any moment. "Trip, now is not a good time," Thomas warned his brother. "Because I didn't make an appointment with you? Brother, life is too short. You see, Toby missed you, so I thought, why not bring him by?" Trip asked. "I highly doubt that Toby missed me. What's the real reason why you are here?" Thomas challenged. "Brother, that is the reason why I'm here," he insisted. "Sally, come here. My brother is home," Trip shouted over his shoulder. Thomas let out a sound of distress. He had no idea how to overcome this hurdle. He was supposed to have dinner with his bride. He only bought enough food for 2.5 to account for his favorite restaurant's small portion sizes. "I didn't expect you for dinner," Thomas tried telling Trip. "Nonsense, we can order a pizza," he said cheerily. There was definitely a catch to his brother's visit. Thomas relented and stepped aside. Trip smirked as he entered, his petite blonde wife following behind him. Toby, a 15-year-old with dark hair and eyes like Trip's, followed last, carrying a suitcase. "What's the suitcase for?" Thomas asked, panic nearly drowning him. "Hey, Uncle Thomas, going on a date?" Toby inquired with interest. "No, I'm getting married," Thomas corrected. "And I only have food for 2.5 people because Torio's portion sizes are questionable. I'm not sure my bride will be up to company if—" Toby patted him on the back. "Who's the lucky lady? You aren't going to impress her in that. It's too stiff," Toby warned. "What happened to the jeans I bought you last year?" Toby seemed to think that making Thomas hip was his reason for breathing. "What do you mean you're getting married?" "Wait, you're getting married without your parents?" Sally demanded. "Tom, don't you think that we would be offended if we weren't invited to your wedding?" "Not really. A mail-order bride is coming, and Cassandra told me that the only way I could sign up for her service was if I signed a contract stating that I would marry her right away." Thomas defensively explained, "I only had 2 days' notice of her arrival. How could I possibly have told the 3 of you in time? We typically speak on Mondays," Thomas argued. Sally let out a groan. "Toby, go put the suitcase in the guest room. I'm sure that your uncle won't mind you sleeping on the couch," she said. "The guest room is for Ms. McDonald," Thomas protested. Toby arched a brow. "Who?" his nephew asked, clearly confused. "My mail-order bride. Her given name is Theresa McDonald, but she prefers the name Tessa," he clarified. "Uncle, if you're going to marry a woman, you can call her by her first name," the teenager lectured right before the doorbell rang. Thomas opened the door and stared into sparkling green eyes. They were quite lovely and bewitching. "Hi, I'm Tessa. Are you the handsome man that I'm supposed to marry?" she asked, shooting him a grin. "My name is Thomas Daly. I presume that you are Miss McDonald?" he asked, thinking that her upturned lips were enticing. "Miss McDonald." "Oh, you are so formal. Yeah, I'm Miss McDonald, but kind sir, I do give you permission to call me Tessa," she offered. "Oh, right, Tessa. What is wrong with you?" Thomas blurted out. He soon regretted the question when Tripp let out a groan. "Wrong with me?" Tessa asked, her cheeks turning red. "You are attractive, have an outgoing personality, and yet needed aid in finding a husband? What is wrong with you? I'm sure many women love the whole serious businessman thing that you've got going. Why are you single?" she inquired. "Women on this island are—" "Mr. Daly, can we please come in?" a familiar, amused voice inquired. "Oh, I forgot my manners. Please, Miss Tessa, come this way. I'm sure you need refreshments." Tessa let out a giggle as Thomas led her inside. A thump of a suitcase caused him to turn around. Miss Anderson stood there, a smile on her face. "Miss Anderson, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for bringing Tessa here safely," Thomas said. Miss Anderson smiled widely at him. "For the millionth time, my name is Dana. Remember? I'm one of 3. If you shout Miss Anderson in a crowd, all 3 of us would respond," she teased. "I see, Dana. Will you be staying for the nuptials?" he inquired. "I can't. Today is Mom's birthday. The girls and I are taking her out," she announced. "Please wish your mother a happy birthday from me," Thomas said. "Will do," Dana responded before leaving the house. Thomas was about to shut the door behind her when she returned, dragging 2 large suitcases. "That's all. Have a nice wedding," Dana said with a grin before running out of the house. After shutting the door, Thomas turned to Tessa, who appeared nervous. Thomas, I didn't bring a fancy dress. I didn't have time to buy one," Tessa confessed. "Well, then I'll change out of the suit." "What did you bring?" he asked. "A casual sundress. I'm not the girly type. I actually hate dresses," she informed him. Thomas nodded and hefted one of her heavy suitcases. "Let me start bringing these upstairs," he offered. Tessa nodded and chose a suitcase. She started in surprise when Toby ran into the mudroom and collected the last piece of luggage. "Hey, Aunt Tessa, I'm Toby. I guarantee that I'll be your favorite nephew," he bragged. She could have nephews from one of her siblings, and logically that nephew would be her favorite, Thomas pointed out. Tessa grinned. "I am an only child for my father, and my mother does have a son that's 10. It's nice to meet you, Toby." "Are you here for the wedding?" Tessa asked, curious. "No, our air conditioner broke again. Uncle didn't tell us that he was getting married. He keeps to his schedule and calls every Monday," Toby explained to Tessa. She smiled and sighed. "Okay, favorite nephew, how about we get my stuff upstairs?" his future wife suggested. Toby led the way through the living room and up the stairs. Thomas noted that his sister-in-law was cuddling with his brother on the couch. Toby led them all into Thomas's neat room. "Wow, what a comfortable-looking bed," Tessa noted, her green eyes bouncing around the room. She walked over to his closet and opened the door. "Your closet is that one?" Thomas said, gesturing to the other closet across the room, although his bride didn't see him unless she had eyes in the back of her head. Tessa removed black shorts and a blue t-shirt and tossed the clothing at him. "Wear this. It's more casual," Tessa said. It was pure madness how people were now messing with the order of things. Thomas bit back the complaint and resigned himself to the craziness. "Great, Uncle, I'll order the pizza," Toby declared before rushing from the room. "Are you going to change?" Tessa asked, the glint in her eyes making him suspicious. "You are still in the room," he reminded the woman. Tessa rolled her eyes and pulled off her t-shirt. "It's just skin," she said before unzipping her suitcase. A pile of jumbled clothing gave Thomas a headache. "Don't you fold your clothes?" he asked her. "I would have, but Dad gave me a week to get out of his house," she responded before straightening. "I take it that the bathroom is that way?" she asked, gesturing to the closed door by the bed. "It is," he confirmed. Tessa grinned and strolled into the bathroom. Chapter 4. "I am making a huge mistake," Tessa told herself as she gazed into the mirror. "My future husband is seriously awkward, and his family is mental." That was that. Once she popped out of the ensuite bathroom, which had white walls and black tiles, Tessa would tell him that she wasn't a fit for him. She was sure that Cassandra would find her a groom, right? Tessa put her red hair into a sloppy bun and tugged on the front of her pale blue sundress. Next, she slipped into her flip-flops and stormed into the bedroom, her speech on her lips. But then she found the freaking room empty. Great. She sighed and strolled into the hallway. There were voices down below, a man's and a woman's. Before she could take her first step, the male spoke. "Do you think that Tessa will marry my brother?" he asked, concerned. "Hell no. I can barely tolerate Thomas on a good day. I think she looked like she was about to run when he called her Miss McDonald. Your brother is weird and—" "Miss Tessa, are you all right?" Thomas inquired. She spun around to see him in the shorts and t-shirt that she had picked out and smiled. He did look good. "You work out," she nervously noted. "Of course. I do a regime every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. "I think I should join you," Tessa said as she noted the hurt in Thomas's eyes. It was obvious that he had also overheard the couple. "Oh, that would be fun. Working out is quite tedious, and I'm sure your company would liven things up," he commented. "Where did you just come from?" Tessa inquired. "Oh, well, Sally, my sister-in-law, is allergic to wool, and there was a wool blanket tossed over the foot of the bed. I went to remove it so that she doesn't have a breakout." Tessa officially hated herself. Yes, Thomas was strange, but he was thoughtful and obviously had feelings. How would he react if she abandoned him? Sally would be proven right, and she hated bullies. But damn it, she needed to know at least if he was a good kisser, right? Tessa got up on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. His lips were warm and soft, and he kissed her with enthusiasm. Thomas wrapped his arms around her and pressed his body against hers as their kiss deepened. His tongue slid into her mouth with a precision that made her knees weak. Tessa flung her arms around his neck as his strong hands kept her from falling. When she pulled back, her future husband had a light smile on his face that made her kiss him again. Damn, who knew that curiosity could open a Pandora's box of need and passion? She figured that he was all hers anyway. Tessa was the aggressor this time, her tongue meeting his. As she kissed him, her fingers began caressing his neck, which made Thomas let out a sound into her mouth. "Tessa, Thomas, the preacher's here," an amused voice called. Thomas didn't seem like he wanted to stop. He peered over her head, nodded, then pressed a fierce kiss to Tessa's swollen lips. "Come on, Tessa, we don't want to keep the man waiting," Thomas said. Tessa sighed, then followed her future brother-in-law down the stairs. Loyalty was really important to her, so she planned on talking to Tripp about allowing that cranky woman to talk trash about his own brother. She stepped into the living room and spotted Cassandra standing with a man with salt and pepper hair. "Tessa," Cassandra called. "This is Reverend Morris. Are you ready to get married?" she asked. "Yes," Tessa found herself saying. Sally actually looked shocked. "Are you sure?" Sally asked. "Tripp and I are very wealthy. We can pay your way back to your home or buy you a place. You don't have to go through with this," Sally insisted. 10 minutes ago, Tessa would have taken that offer. Instead, she caressed her bottom lip. "No, thanks. I'll marry Thomas," she responded. "Glad to hear it. Thomas is a good man," Reverend Morris said, his eyes shining with excitement. He then directed Tessa to hold hands with Thomas. Their marriage ceremony was quick, and Cassandra and the Reverend quickly departed the house soon after. They barely had the chance to breathe when the doorbell rang. "Who's that?" Thomas asked, clearly overwhelmed. "Sally and I were hungry, so we ate the dinner you had on the table. We ordered the both of you a pizza," Tripp brightly announced. "But I wanted Tessa to enjoy a more formal dinner," he argued back. "The pizza is $20. Go take your new wife out on the patio and eat," Sally ordered. "You know I hate eating on the patio there are." "I don't care where we eat," Tessa assured her new husband. "Tommy, you have to get the door. Oh, and pay for the pizza," Tripp insisted. Thomas led Tessa to the door and opened it to reveal a pizza delivery guy. Thomas paid for the pizza, then led Tessa to the kitchen island. She hopped onto a bar stool as Thomas glared at the pizza. "This is not what I had planned," he huffed. "It isn't a big deal. You can take me out to dinner tomorrow," Tessa suggested. "On Sunday night I usually go for my swim," Thomas informed her. "A swim? Yeah, I love to swim," Tessa cheered. "We can do the swim tomorrow and dinner Monday night. I can order what you were supposed to eat," he insisted. Tessa had the feeling that Thomas wasn't going to let it go. "Sounds good, Tom," she said. He frowned at her, a dark brow rising. "Tom. Most people call me Thomas. And wait a second, Cassandra informed me that your name is Theresa. But you prefer Tessa. Why?" Thomas asked as he handed her a plate. "Do you really think that the name Theresa fits me?" Tessa teased. "No, and I don't think that Tessa fits you either. I think that the concept of some names are stupid. If I named you, I would have named you Sunny," he decided. "Your personality lights up a room." "So there you have it, Thomas. I'm Tessa to everyone else, but Sunny to you." Wow, this guy was awkward, serious, but really sweet. He waited for Tessa to grab a slice of pepperoni pizza before taking his own. Thomas ate neatly, wiping his mouth at the possibility of sauce while Tessa inhaled her food. As she was happily chowing down on her second slice of pizza, Sally made an appearance. "So, Tessa, do you want to run away yet?" Sally asked. Yes, I do, Tessa responded. Thomas frowned, seeming surprised by the statement. Really? I bet you wish that you took me up on my offer, huh? Sally laughed. I've never met such a disloyal family before. I mean, look at you. You are in his house, eating the dinner that he prepared for his bride and didn't have the decency to buy our pizza. And now you want to make fun of him? Is it going to be like this for the rest of our lives, Tom? Tessa demanded. Well, it depends on how long Sally lives. She has already surpassed her child-rearing years, so she won't die in childbirth. She doesn't do manual labor and sleeps for most of the day. She has gained a bit of weight since I met her. I'm thinking that she isn't much for exercising. Sally stormed out of the room and Tessa let out a laugh. What did I say? Thomas asked. Tom, you can't tell women that they've gained weight, she lectured. Why not? It's the truth, he reasoned. And besides, she doesn't waste an opportunity to remind me of how odd I am. Good point. But Tessa wasn't going to quit. You are never to comment on my weight gain, Tessa professed. What if you ask me if you'd gained weight? Thomas challenged. Are you saying that I should lie to you? Thomas demanded. Because I won't lie to you, Sonny. Well, maybe you should soften the blow. Like maybe you can say, I noticed that you have made some changes to your waistline. So you want me to beat around the bush? Tom demanded. Of course I want you to beat around the bush, Tessa responded. Sonny, that's not going to happen, he warned. She decided that she wasn't going to argue with someone that was stuck in his ways. Instead, she continued to eat her pizza. They would have a whole lifetime for her to train him to be the perfect husband. Chapter 5. Tessa changed into a tank top and shorts, the exhaustion making her steps heavy. She strolled into the bedroom to see Thomas in nothing but his boxers. She stared at his sculpted muscles, her mouth watering. Take it easy, Tessa. You can't jump in. You just met him, she told herself. She eyed the bed, wondering what side Thomas wanted. I can sleep on the floor, Thomas offered. You don't look too eager to share a bed with me. Oh, which side is yours? Tessa decided to ask. The kisses from earlier played through her exhausted brain. I sleep on the left, he announced before slipping into bed. Tessa crawled in beside him and threw all caution to the wind. She rolled until her face rested on his chest. Thomas wrapped an arm around her and she snuggled close. As soon as she found a comfortable position, she fell asleep. Trip Daly bit out a curse when he reviewed the will. If Thomas Daly wasn't still married by his 51st birthday, then Trip Daly would inherit Frank Daly's estate. His great-grandfather had been dead for over 20 years, and Trip could still remember the words that were whispered to him. You may be older, but your brother inherited the common sense. Trip closed the lid as his wife entered the room. She was dressed in her pink pajamas. The central air made her shiver as she passed the air vent. She rubbed her arms and scowled. Why does Thomas insist on lowering the temperature each night? He sweats in his sleep, Trip absent-mindedly responded. All he could think was that his brother had finally found a woman that would marry him. Tessa was young and beautiful and seemed to accept his oddities. At the very moment, Thomas didn't have a large amount of wealth. Well, he did all right as an island worker. He was a frugal man who didn't make frivolous purchases. Trip wouldn't have been surprised if the mortgage on Thomas's house was already paid off. He was that kind of person. What do you think of Tessa? He asked Sally. She seems to like Thomas. Who knows why? Sally scowled. Or maybe she's desperate and is forcing herself to like him. I can't tell. I saw them kiss, Tripp blurted out. She likes him well enough. Tripp couldn't help but envy his brother. Tessa had wrapped herself in his arms in such a way that showed that she was hungry for his lips. There was no way his younger brother could give up that kind of passion. What are we? Tripp's cell phone vibrated on the nightstand. He picked it up and tapped at the screen to read the message. Troy, hiding out at Thomas's house? Nice, but I found you. Get out here now. Tripp most certainly wasn't going to meet Troy. He eyed his wife, who was frowning at him. An idea came to mind. Sally, meet Troy. He's outside. He won't hurt you. Tripp lied. In truth, he wasn't sure if his wife would be harmed or not. Tell him that I don't have the money. Sally scowled. No, she protested. I'll just ask Toby to meet him then. I can't imagine that Troy would hurt a teenager. Tripp figured. You won't face him, Sally snapped. I am the breadwinner of the house. I can't afford to face him. She slipped her feet into a pair of flip-flops and left the room. Tripp sincerely hoped that his wife wasn't harmed. Sally Daly stood outside her brother-in-law's house, her heart racing. They wouldn't harm a woman, she thought to herself. But the men probably would kill Tripp when all was said and done. The thud of footsteps made her glance around. Thomas had a porch light that illuminated the area. A tall, thin man wearing a hoodie strode forward, a bat in his grip. It was obvious that he had planned to break Tripp's kneecap. Hopefully, he would remember that females were scarce on Portum Island. Sally, Troy called out. She winced, hoping that Toby wouldn't leave the house to investigate. She had no doubt in her mind that Troy Burke would harm him. Not all families on Portum Island were wealthy, though no one was homeless. Troy Burke was one of those men who would do anything for a quick buck. Troy, it's not a good time, Sally chastised. Troy walked forward, his bat held at his side. When he was feet away from the porch, he spoke. Sally, tell Tripp to come out here, or else I'll redecorate Thomas's house, he threatened. Right, like Sally cared about the state of Thomas's house? She honestly wanted to see the reaction he had when he discovered that someone vandalized his property. But she couldn't act like she wanted that scenario to come true. Please don't do that. Leave Thomas out of it. Her voice quivered for good measure. Tripp's idea to hide out at Thomas's house didn't work after all. It's either Tripp comes out here or a few of Thomas's windows will suffer, Troy warned. The doc wants his money. Of course the doc wanted $250,000. Who wouldn't? Tripp isn't feeling well. Can't you just come back? Sally complained. Troy sighed and walked away. Sally fled, relief washing over her when she was inside. Tessa was jolted awake, a sound disturbing her sleep. She opened her eyes with regret. It was unfortunate that once she woke up, it was next to impossible to fall asleep. She grumbled as the sound of breaking glass filled the air. Oh, hell no. Did that crazy sister-in-law of hers think that she could trash the house? Tessa hopped out of bed, eyeing the room. Damn, there wasn't a bat or hammer lying around. Oh well. It seemed that her husband was sleeping through the damage. She gently shook his shoulder. Nothing. Tam, wake up, Tessa shouted. That didn't work. Okay, then, her new husband was a deep sleeper. Tessa ran barefoot out of the room and down the staircase. The kitchen light was on, which was strange. Sally sat at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea. What's the racket? Tessa demanded. Oh, just the neighborhood kids starting trouble. I wouldn't engage them, she advised. Of course you would feel that way. This isn't your house, Tessa commented. She strode out of the kitchen, one thought on her mind. She didn't have a bat, a can of mace, or a hammer, so she'd have to improvise. Thomas had shown her the controls for the sprinklers. He preferred a green lawn. She walked up to the control panel and turned the sprinklers to their highest setting. The slamming of the bat immediately stopped, which was fortunate. She didn't have to search far for the source of the racket. The troublesome neighborhood kids had actually smashed both glass patio doors. Tessa couldn't believe the mess. What now? Sighing, Tessa raced up the stairs and left on top of Thomas, her final attempt at waking him up. Her body fell atop a hard, muscular form. Arms quickly wrapped around her. "Sonny?" he asked, disoriented. "The neighborhood kids bashed in your patio doors," Tessa quickly reported. "What should we do?"
"Call the police,"
Thomas groggily responded. Right. Why hadn't Tessa thought of that? She rolled off Thomas and snatched up her phone. She tapped the screen a few times before realizing that it was dead. Crap. "Tom, what's the password for your phone?" Tessa demanded. Thankfully, he muttered a series of numbers that Tessa quickly typed in. Then she called the police.
"What happened to my patio doors?"
Thomas roared 20 minutes later. The officer that Tessa had called was sitting at the kitchen table questioning Sally and Tripp. Toby was still sleeping on the couch. Thomas had finally made his way down the stairs after a couple of minutes. "I told you, Tom, some neighborhood kids bashed the doors in," Tessa quickly explained, as Thomas began running his fingers through his dark hair.
"What a mess. Who in the hell is going to fix this on a Sunday?"
Thomas demanded. Tessa had no idea how to answer that question. Sally joined the couple, panic on her face. "Tessa, can I please speak to my brother-in-law?" she asked hopefully. "You mean without me?" Tessa questioned. Thomas threaded his fingers through his thick black hair again.
"Tessa, can you just do what she wants? It will get rid of her quicker,"
he pleaded. Tessa nodded and rushed up the back stairs, determined to eavesdrop. "Tommy, I saw something troubling," Sally sniffed.
"Did Tripp have an affair again?"
Thomas asked, annoyed by the delay. He had to figure out what to do about his glass patio doors. He didn't have time for the monotonous drama that his sister-in-law brought. "No, Tripp did not have an affair. Your precious bride smashed the patio doors. I saw her do it." Chapter 6. No, Tripp did not have an affair. Your precious bride smashed the patio doors. I saw her do it. Tessa shifted from foot to foot, her anger making it difficult to stay in place. That crazy broad did not lie like that. Tessa was cuddling in bed with her husband when she heard the first smash.
"With what?"
Thomas asked, his flat tone impassive. What? Why not call BS and kick the woman out of the house? What was up with disloyal men? That was a response her father would have given. Tessa prepared herself for what was going to happen next. With a bat, she was...
"Was she inside?"
Thomas demanded. Yes. She obviously wasn't going outside to smash the doors. Sally snapped.
"Well, then, you were mistaken.
The trajectory of the glass would imply that someone hit the glass from the outside. Remember, Sally, I used to be a police officer. I know what to look for in a vandalism case. So what did you really see?" Thomas challenged. I saw your bride hit the glass. Tessa is trouble, believe me, she pleaded. Thomas let out a noise that displayed his displeasure.
"Maybe you were afraid and saw incorrectly. Go to bed. I'm going to speak to the police officer," he ordered.
Damn. Seriously,
Why hadn't Thomas thrown the lying thought out? What the hell? Tessa tiptoed away, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, and went to bed. "Sonny, it's time to wake up," Thomas told his sleeping wife. It was well after 3 p.m. She was fortunate enough to have slept through the installation of his glass doors. Thankfully, his shop had a set in stock, but it cost him an exorbitant amount. Now he just wanted to go for a swim to escape his annoying sister-in-law. "Tessa, wake up."
"It's too early," she complained. He sighed and gently tore the comforter from her body. She let out a groan and sat up, her green eyes filled with fire. "What the hell, Tom? Why did you wake me up? I was sleeping," she shouted. Her anger was unreasonable, so he didn't bother challenging her. Instead, he strolled into his closet and selected a pair of swim trunks. The sound of a drawn-out sigh reached his ears. He went into the bedroom and saw Tessa frantically rubbing her eyes. "In the future, don't wake me up if I'm sleeping," she lectured.
"You told me that you wanted to go to the beach today," Thomas reminded the cranky woman.
"That was before the vandal broke the patio doors. And what was with your sister-in-law? I can't believe she blamed me," she complained, which made him stiffen.
"You eavesdropped?"
Thomas asked, puzzled. "Yes, and you know what? You didn't defend me," Tessa accused.
"I reasoned with her, pointing out that the glass splatter made it unlikely that you broke the glass," he reasoned, affronted that she invaded his privacy.
"You should have said, Tessa did not do it. She was with me the whole time. If you continue to disrespect my wife, you're no longer welcomed."
"That's unreasonable. As a family member, she has the right to offer her suspicions. If I throw her out, she will be hesitant to express herself in the future," Thomas warned. Tessa let out a curse.
"Damn it. What the hell, Tom? Why are you so logical?" Tessa cried as she tossed a pillow at Thomas. He caught it and gently placed it on the bed. Her green eyes flashed and she stood, her fists clenched.
"Why are you so emotional?"
Thomas countered, his control beginning to slip. This woman was maddening. She eavesdropped, she yelled, she threw pillows, she didn't respect time, and she was utterly beautiful.
Why in the hell did his eyes fall to her plump lips?
Tessa stepped toward him and pushed a finger into his chest. "You never tell a woman that she's being emotional," she coolly lectured. He stiffened, preferring her raised voice to her calm one. Damn it all to hell. Thomas figured that he didn't want to argue with Tessa at all. He stepped forward and pressed his lips to hers. Obviously, her response in the beginning was minimal, but then her mouth parted and his tongue swept into her mouth, which tasted like toothpaste. He pulled back and scowled.
"You recently brushed your teeth," Thomas accused. "You weren't sleeping the entire day."
Tessa let out a groan. "You kiss me like that and you're focusing on toothpaste?" she asked, the mirth in her eyes making his chest tighten.
"I was simply pointing out that you spent the day in bed. Why?" "You should have joined me downstairs,"
he said before pressing his lips to hers again. Her hands tangled in his hair as their kiss deepened. His lips hungered to kiss her soft skin, so Thomas pulled away and gently kissed her cheek. He then trailed kisses down her neck, which made Tessa's breathing hitch. Spurred on by that reaction, his lips repeated the same motion on the other side of her neck. Tessa wore a flimsy tank top, so Thomas was able to kiss her collarbone without being impeded. In between kissing her skin, his lips found hers again. She pulled away with a gasp and stepped back. Her cheeks were flushed and her lips were swollen. "Wow, Tom, if you don't stop that, I'll jump your bones."
Tessa said before fanning herself with her hand. Thomas understood the reference, but didn't understand what jumping bones had to do with lovemaking, but he let it go. "We could go for a swim," he eagerly told Tessa. "I made a picnic. It's a sufficient amount of food for 2 people and even has dessert. I baked cookies and—" Tessa tossed herself into his arms, a thrill running through him when she wrapped both her arms and legs around him. Her lips found his in a slow, sensual kiss. She regrettably released him and ran to her closet. That was his cue to give her time to change. Tessa took half an hour to prepare for the picnic. Thomas spent the minutes pacing the kitchen, eager to spend time with his odd wife. Toby was sitting at the kitchen table eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. His parents were in the living room watching television. The picnic basket was resting on the kitchen table, along with a beach bag of sunscreen, beach towels, a blanket, and sunglasses. Tessa rushed down the stairs, dressed in a light blue cover-up and black flip-flops. Her red hair was up in a ponytail, and she had a phone in one hand and a sketchbook in another. She shoved her sketchbook into the beach bag. "Ready to go?" she asked, a sparkle in her eye. "Yes," Thomas said. He hefted the bag and held out a hand, which she took. They left through the front door and walked down the street. Tessa stared at someone who was riding a horse in the middle of the street. "Can we get a horse?" she wondered. "They are expensive, Tessa. I have enough money to survive, but I'm not a wealthy man," he responded. "I can get a job," Tessa offered. "You would be willing to do something like that?" Thomas asked, surprised. "Sure. I hate exercise, but love riding horses." "What about a bicycle?" Thomas asked. Tessa turned up her nose. "I guess it will be economical if I find a job close to where we live," she agreed. So Tessa could be reasonable, Thomas thought as they made their way onto the beach. The beach was nearly empty, which meant a social event was happening. He'd have to keep an eye out for events. Tessa seemed like the kind of woman that would enjoy that kind of thing. "Hey, this looks like a good spot," Tessa cheered. She gestured to an area that was the furthest away from the couples. Thomas unloaded the bag, stretching out the blanket and using 4 rocks he kept to hold down the sides. Then he sat and eyed the basket. Tessa stripped out of the cover-up, revealing a 2-piece that displayed her body. She then folded up her cover-up and shoved it into the bag. Thomas dug the sunscreen out of the bag and handed it to Tessa. "You think of everything," she said before applying the sunscreen to her skin. "Can you get my back?" "Sure. You'll have to get mine as well," Thomas warned her. She nodded and handed Thomas the lotion before kneeling in front of him. He began applying the lotion to her soft skin, enjoying the opportunity to touch her. Tessa shuddered, which pleased him. It was obvious that she was enjoying the action. As he worked, Thomas thought of the possibilities that could arise with her. His wife seemed to like his company. Maybe she would be more than someone who would simply bear his children. Chapter 7. "Ready to go in?" Thomas asked Tessa as soon as she finished applying his sunscreen. "Or would you rather eat first?" "I snuck downstairs a couple of hours ago and ate a granola bar and some peanut butter crackers," Tessa informed him before pressing a soft kiss to his shoulder. She stood and stretched. "Why did you sneak?" Thomas asked as she took her hand in his. "Tom, it's time that you learn a lesson about women. I was mad at you, so I didn't want to talk to you," Tessa reasoned. "You could have just explained your anger. I would have assured you that I didn't believe that you shattered the glass doors," he pointed out. It's a reflex, Tessa forced herself to admit.
Reflex?
Thomas asked as they stepped into the water. Tessa bit her lip, wondering how much to tell her new husband. I grew up with my father. My mother didn't want me, Tessa confessed.
How do you know? Did she tell you?
Thomas inquired sympathetically. Tessa frowned. Yes, she told me. She's married to a rich guy and they have a son, Michael. Michael is the perfect child, with good looks, a high IQ, and talent. He's only 10, but I'm pretty sure that he'll go to the Olympics for track and field. She reported, feeling glum.
Trip is the charming brother, the one my mother is proud of,
Thomas informed his wife. Really? My mother would have loved a son like you. You are smart, organized, and I bet when you were younger you were self-sufficient. Tessa gasped. Thomas nodded.
I had to be. My father was a gambler and my mother drank too many spirits. That's why I have an alcohol-free household, he commented.
Tessa had to spend a lifetime without drinking? That was going to suck. I take it from your expression that you enjoy a drink on occasion. I love margaritas. Every time I vacation in Europe, I make sure to drink as many as possible. Is that a deal breaker? Tessa asked, curious.
Sonny, I can't hold you to expectations that I set for myself.
You'll learn over the centuries that people on this island can coexist while having differing opinions. Centuries? Tessa asked. Part of her was relieved that she could enjoy a drink if she pleased without causing discord between her and her husband. But the other part wanted to know what her husband was talking about.
Cassandra didn't tell you?
Thomas asked, astonished. Tell me what? Tessa demanded.
Well, don't be alarmed, but the barrier surrounding the island does a few peculiar things that none of us can understand. One of which is slowing down the aging process,
he admitted, which made Tessa's heart nearly stop. You aren't serious, Tessa squeaked.
I can prove it. There are many citizens of the island who are over 100,
he told her. Fine. People thought that they had longer lifespans. Tessa wasn't going to waste the afternoon on that. If he had proof, she would see it. Okay, Tom, I'll reserve judgment, Tessa offered. Thomas nodded.
Fair enough.
So, we digressed. Why was being mad at me a reflex? Tom demanded as the water reached her waist. They had stopped walking and were allowing the waves to lap at them. Tessa squeezed his hand. My father raised me. I spent the last 10 years protecting him from gold diggers. I failed with Gail. She does not love my father. She actually admitted it once when she was drunk. I'm not proud of it, but Gail offered to have dinner at my house, just the two of us. I agreed and spiked her grape juice. The woman is a lightweight. She was spilling her guts willingly. She talked about how making love to my father was disgustingly boring and that she wanted a better prenuptial agreement. I should have recorded it. The next day I told my father and he called me a liar. He told me that he was angry that I spiked Gail's drink and that I'd better get used to her. I tried everything to be rid of her, but nothing worked. My father proposed, then cut me out of the will. He gave me a week to leave his house. Cassandra called the same day I got the ultimatum. She confessed.
Why did you look for a mail-order bride agency?
He asked. Curiosity. I wanted to see what I got.
Are you satisfied with who you ended up with?
Thomas asked. It was obvious that he wasn't flirting. The man wanted to know the answer. Tessa grinned and released his hand. Then she launched herself at him, wrapping her arms and legs around him. He gripped her bottom, which made desire dance in her lower belly. Tessa peered up into his dark, worried eyes and pressed her lips to his. There was something about the pull between them, the magnetism that made it difficult for her to keep her lips from his. She controlled the kiss, her tongue delving inside his mouth. He groaned in her mouth, his grip on her bottom tightening a smidge. He pulled his head away, cursed, then ran into deeper water with her wrapped around him. "Tom, put me down," Tessa playfully yelped. Her husband dipped them both in the water and then brought them back up again. Tessa laughed hysterically, her smile wide. She hopped down and splashed Thomas, which caused him to frown before retaliating. The salt water slammed into Tessa's stomach, making her squeal. She ran backwards, her aim to get away from his attack. For minutes, they chased each other in the water, the fun making Tessa's mouth stretch in a grin. The couple called a truce, and Thomas led her to the blanket. They dried off with the towels that Thomas brought and sat on the blanket. Her husband smiled at her. "I didn't pack anything too impressive, but I hope it does the trick," he told her before pulling out a sandwich wrapped in foil and handing it to Tessa. She unwrapped the food, her stomach growling, and took a bite. "Peanut butter and jelly, I haven't had that in years," she cheered, enjoying the sweet and salty combination. Thomas handed her a water bottle, which was cool to the touch. Her surprise made him smile. "I put the water bottles in the freezer for a bit so that they would stay cool. I took care not to overly freeze the water," he said as she took a sip of the liquid. Thomas dug into his own sandwich, his expression lighting up. He must also be a fan of PB&J. He pulled out 2 bags of baked Lay's potato chips and handed Tessa one. "Thanks for the effort, Tom. I had a lot of fun in the water," Tessa admitted. "You draw, right? Are you any good?" Thomas asked, which made embarrassment fill Tessa. How in the hell was she going to tell such a serious person that she pretended to be an artist because her mother hated it? "Well, I'm not good at all. Sketching just keeps my hands busy," she said, which was a partial truth. She only brought the sketchbook along in case he decided to read. She hated to read and needed something to make her look occupied. "I see. Will I get to see your sketches someday?" he wondered. "You can see them now, if you want. They aren't all that good. At most, I can draw animals," Tessa explained before popping a chip into her mouth. "What do you do for fun?" Thomas frowned at that question as if having fun was a foreign concept. "When I'm restless, I go for swims or go out to eat at a restaurant. I do a bit of woodworking. You can see my shop if you would like. I built all of the bedroom furniture in our room," he admitted, which impressed Tessa. "Why not build furniture for a living?" she inquired. Thomas shook his head. "Trent Campbell already has a monopoly of that business. His family has been making pieces for a few decades. It wouldn't be practical to start a rival company." "What about working with him?" Tessa wondered, which made Thomas frown. "Most people have an odd reaction to me. You must have noticed that by now. My directness is sometimes off-putting. Now, Mr. Campbell has not been rude to me by any means, but I highly doubt that he'd give me a job either," Thomas confessed. For a moment, Tessa saw the loneliness in his dark eyes. In that moment, all she wanted to do was wrap her arms around him. "Lucky for you, I'm here now. People love me," Tessa bragged. She chuckled at his mock dubious expression. "My sister-in-law wasn't fond of you. She tried to accuse you of committing a crime your first night here," Thomas noted. "I know. And I wonder why that is," Tessa said before taking a sip of her water. She is a drama queen, Thomas figured. But Tessa knew that Sally Daly was up to something. Chapter 8. As soon as Thomas rose from the bed, Tessa let out a noise of complaint. She enjoyed snuggling with her new husband. She sat up and rolled her eyes as he stripped out of his pajamas and tossed them in the hamper. "Where are you going?" Tessa asked as she enjoyed the view. "To work, Sonny," he responded. "Go back to bed." "Can't. I am already awake," she grumbled as he entered the shower. He made an agitated noise before stomping out of the bathroom. "Did you move my body wash?" he demanded. "No," Tessa said, frowning at him. "It's on the shelf beside your scrubber." "It isn't there," Thomas huffed. "So then use my body wash," Tessa offered. "Seriously, I don't want to smell like flowers," he complained. "Tom, it's too early for this. Hang on," Tessa said before sliding out of bed. She knew how particular her husband was and didn't move the body wash. She bet she knew who did. Tessa strolled out of her room and rushed down the stairs. She had pulled this very prank on one of her father's women before. She peered into the trash can and saw Thomas's body wash on top. She retrieved the bottle from the trash and sighed in relief when it was still half full. What an idiot! When Tessa had pulled the prank, she had emptied the body wash. She wiped it down with disinfectant wipes before running back upstairs and bursting into the bedroom. "Found it," Tessa triumphantly cheered. "It was in the trash." "How did it get there?" Thomas demanded, before snatching the bottle. "Either Trip or Sally was messing with you. I once did the same thing to one of my father's ex-girlfriends. I think her name was Josie. Anyway, she only used a particular body wash, so I poured it down the drain and tossed the bottle. My guess is that Sally wanted to throw off your day by tossing the body wash. She probably didn't think that I would realize it," Tessa speculated. "Sally has never done that before, and you just admitted to doing this to someone else," Thomas argued. "Well, I didn't do this," Tessa said. "At least you returned it," Thomas figured. "But next time, don't do something like this." He stormed into the bathroom and slammed the door shut. Tessa cursed and stumbled into bed, her anger rising. That stupid Sally was messing with Thomas. She wouldn't have been surprised if that woman was the one that shattered his glass doors. Tessa had to figure out why she wanted to cause problems between Thomas and her. What would Sally gain if their marriage fell apart? Tessa sighed and grabbed her laptop. She was up, so she might as well do some research. Thomas rushed out of the bathroom in a towel. She watched as he strolled into the closet and pulled out a suit and tie. "Where do you work?" Tessa asked. "Not now, Tessa. I'm not up to talking to you," he stated before lying his suit on the bed. Right, he was still upset about the body wash stunt. Why was he fussing over it? Seriously? Over body wash, Tom? You shouldn't let everything get to you. Just shut up, Tessa. I'm used to silence when I get ready in the morning," Thomas shouted. It stung how he yelled at her. She was stunned into silence for a moment, but then her stubbornness reared its ugly head. "Why did you get a wife if you wanted silence?" she challenged. Thomas ignored her comment, dressed, and stormed out the door without saying goodbye to his wife. That hurt. Tessa sat there for a moment, staring at the computer screen. But then desperation for an escape filled her brain. She needed to get out of the house. 2 hours later, Tessa rushed down the stairs. Sally was at the kitchen table sipping a cup of coffee. Toby was eating a bowl of cereal. Her husband was nowhere in sight. Tessa, I made a pot of coffee. Would you like some? She inquired. Tessa glared at the woman, whose eyes widened. You aren't fooling me. I know that you moved Thomas's body wash, she accused. I'm onto you. Tessa snatched up a granola bar, ruffled Toby's hair, then rushed out the door. Tessa was relieved when she entered the air-conditioned building where classes and seminars were held. She eyed the beautiful woman with chocolate skin that was sitting behind the reception desk. Good morning, I'm Chantel. How can I help you? The woman inquired. I'm going to the business proposal seminar, Tessa replied. Chantel walked Tessa through a questionnaire she had to fill out, then gave her directions to the classroom she needed, which was on the second floor. Tessa strolled into the room designated for the business seminar and was immediately annoyed. There were nothing but men in the stinking room. A man with honey-brown skin and curly black hair approached her and grinned. Are you lost? He asked as he fiddled with his gray tie. I think that the yoga class is tomorrow. Her anger nearly caused her to punch him in the nose. Who in the hell did this man think that he was? I'm pretty sure that Chantel said that the business proposal seminar was in room 206, Tessa said, which caused surprise to fill his face. Oh, I'm sorry about that. My name is Andy. What's your name? Tessa, she responded, relieved that the man smiled. Sorry. You know what people say about assuming? Andy teased. Thanks for apologizing, Tessa said, sincerity ringing in her voice. At least someone could apologize. Thomas was an utter jerk for telling her to shut up that morning. She shifted and saw Esperanza strolling into the room. Her former hairdresser seemed happy, which made a spark of jealousy fill Tessa. She looked great, wearing a casual dress that hugged her curves. But then the realization that she wasn't the only woman in the seminar spurred her forward. Tessa ran to Esperanza and wrapped her arms around her. Oh, thank goodness! I'm so happy to see you, Tessa exclaimed. Esperanza gently patted her back. It's nice to see you, Tessa. How have things been for you? Esperanza asked. Oh, man, I'm married to the most serious oaf on the planet, she complained as she dragged Esperanza into the room. She decided that she wouldn't talk to the other woman about the body wash debacle. There were 2 rows of tables that could seat 3 each. Tessa chose the table that held a man who looked like he was having a hangover. He wore a t-shirt and jeans and looked displeased at the sight of them. Shouldn't you ladies be at home pampering yourselves? The man huffed. That bad, huh? Esperanza asked before Tessa could tell the man to screw himself. What? The miserable man snapped. Tessa wanted to welcome him to the club of pain and misery, but didn't feel that charitable. Your breakup. It was that bad? Esperanza asked. She left me for the owner of a processing center, he gruffly responded. So you decided to start a business to get back at her? Tessa guessed. What kind of business do you want to start? Esperanza inquired. Why did she care? Tessa thought to herself. A barber shop, he responded. What about you, Tessa? She asked. Tessa shrugged. A bar? She responded. In truth, she only produced that answer because Thomas hated drinking. Wouldn't that piss him off? I wanted to start a spa, Esperanza excitedly said. What do you say the 3 of us go in together? The man eyed Esperanza with interest. What is your skill set? He asked her. Back in Jersey, I used to work in a salon on weekdays and a nail salon on weekends. What about you? The man asked Tessa. What are you, my interviewer? I don't even know your name, Tessa pointed out. I'm Kevin Taylor. I used to work with Brad Adams at his barber shop until Stacy left me for Brad's brother. Are you referring to Emma's brother-in-law? Esperanza asked, the disbelief in her voice making Tessa perk up. She was about to hear some major drama. Yes, Stacy and Emma are sisters. Have you met Emma? Oh, I've met Emma, all right. Esperanza regaled the group with the tale of an ex that didn't know how to move on. Tessa thought that the reason why this was still probably an issue was because Esperanza was too nice. The big oaf wouldn't have allowed that kind of behavior, Tessa noted. Who's the big oaf? Esperanza asked, curious. Thomas Daly. Seriously, he's so stuffy, it's like he's allergic to having fun. That's because he's 50 years old, Kevin offered. Tessa's heart nearly stopped at that news. Either Kevin Taylor was crazy or people on the island did have an extended lifespan. She kept it cool, not comfortable with showing her disbelief. Of course, only I would end up with the old geezer, Tessa snorted. Who are you calling old? I'm 75, Kevin said, sounding offended. Tessa rolled her eyes. Seriously, this slow aging thing is going to be something I have to get used to, Tessa said as the instructor strolled into the room. Tessa let out a curse. It's him, she hissed. That's the big oaf. Tessa's heart nearly broke when an exasperated expression flashed across Thomas's face. She longed to toss herself into his arms and bury her head into his chest, but it was obvious that he was still mad about the stupid body wash. I'm Mr. Daly, and I will be your instructor for this class. If you don't have what it takes to run a business, please leave now so that you don't waste my time. That was obviously aimed at Tessa, but she would stay firmly in her seat. Chapter 9. Jealousy nearly made Thomas's gut explode when he saw Tessa sitting at the same table as Kevin Taylor, a reported Casanova. It was said that one look would get a woman into his bed. Now that man was near his wife. He was near the wife that he told to shut up. So Tessa loved playing a practical joke. Thomas thought that he could get used to that characteristic if they could work out a day to play the jokes. Maybe they could have a practical joke Friday or something. She seemed to be the mischievous type. He shook himself and continued with the presentation, which went flawlessly. He was a little hurt to discover that Tessa wanted to open a spa by seeing her in his class. Why hadn't she mentioned it while they were on the beach? Well, he'd ask this question as soon as they returned home. As soon as the seminar ended, Thomas sat at the desk waiting for anyone with questions. The only person that had a question was Tessa. She strolled up to him and smiled. Nice class. Is this what you do for a living? Are you a professor? She inquired. Since there wasn't a line behind her, Thomas decided that he should express himself. Tessa, I apologize for yelling at you. I wasn't prepared for a practical joke. I shouldn't have told you to shut up and... She glared at him. Let's talk over lunch, she suggested. At a restaurant. That might not fit into our weekly budget. You see, I splurged on the wedding dinner that we didn't even get to eat. Thomas, look, I'm not used to the whole being poor thing, so be patient with me. What I really want is to not go home, she confessed, because your sister-in-law will be there, and I feel suffocated. Thomas nodded, making a mental note to pull money from his savings. Tessa looked like she was about to have a breakdown. Okay, he said. She grinned and held out a hand. He stood and grasped it. This was his own personal classroom, so the materials were fine on the desk. After locking the door, Thomas led his wife into the elevator. So you decided on starting a spa? That was unexpected. I honestly joined this seminar to get out of the house. The decision to start a spa was unexpected, Tessa admitted, which made Thomas feel better. They walked to the restaurant in silence. Tessa's green eyes studied the islanders as they bounced about. Her eyes lit up when she spotted the furniture store. "Is that the furniture building shop?" Tessa inquired. That immediately made Thomas feel inadequate. "Yes, that is Mr. Campbell's business," he confirmed. "Maybe we should stop in after lunch, see if he has an opening?" Tessa suggested. "I'd rather not. I have to teach a computer seminar," he reported as they entered the seafood restaurant. Like he expected, Tessa's eyes lit up. "This place looks great," she said as they chose a table. Thomas hesitated to tell her it was on the expensive side. She sat across from him, her eyes resting on one of the thick menus. Thomas already knew that he was getting a cheeseburger with a side salad. He wasn't much of a seafood person and did this more for Tessa. "So what are you getting?" Tessa inquired. "The cheeseburger," he confessed. She frowned. "So you aren't a seafood kind of guy?" His wife assumed, her frown making him nervous. "You like seafood, and I'm terribly sorry for how I acted, Sonny. I get stressed when things don't go my way. That's no excuse for talking to you in that way. Can you forgive me?" he asked hopefully. All he wanted to do was kiss her plump lips. "It's okay, Tom. I'm more upset that you don't believe me," she confessed. "Believe you about what?" Tom asked, confused. "Tom, I have no reason to upset you. I think Sally has a mean streak," she insisted. Tom didn't like his in-law and didn't care to fight over something so trivial. "I believe you, Tessa," he said. Honestly, he couldn't care less about some stupid body wash. He just wanted to make sure that Mr. Taylor didn't steal his wife. "Good. So the cheeseburgers are delicious, huh?" Tessa asked, her eyes lighting up. Before he could respond to her, Miss Lee, the waitress, strolled over to them. "Miss Lee, how are you?" Thomas inquired. The tall brunette smiled at him, but it didn't quite leave her eyes. Tessa could give her a smiling lesson. "Hi, Mr. Daly, who's your friend?" she asked as she eyed the beautiful woman sitting in front of him. It was so tempting to say none of your business, but he refrained from responding that way. "I'm Thomas's wife, Tessa," Tessa answered. The waitress frowned at Tessa as if she said something off. "Oh, right, you are a mail-order bride. So what were you trying to escape?" Miss Lee inquired. "I mean, you had to be desperate to marry Mr. Daly." Tessa immediately got to her feet and scowled at the woman. "I'd much rather make a sandwich at home. I'm not feeling the rude waitstaff," Tessa loudly said. "Oh, dear." Patrons stopped speaking and were looking at his wife. Miss Lee seemed startled by Tessa's temperament. "Someone like you married Mr. Daly? Oh, yeah, this isn't going to go well." Miss Lee huffed before storming off. What had gotten into that strange waitress? Women were strange indeed. Thomas stood and followed Tessa out of the restaurant. She immediately stormed into a diner down the street. Thomas grinned. This place was much cheaper than the seafood restaurant. They were led to a booth in the back, and Tessa decided to sit in the booth beside him. Her hand gently rested on his arm, making heat fill him. "No one will ever speak to you that way on my watch," Tessa said as a waitress with a wide grin joined them. "Hi, I'm Ashley. I'll be taking care of you. Can we start with drinks?" she asked, her blue eyes sparkling. "Water for me, please," Thomas said. "I'd like a cherry Coke," Tessa responded. The beautiful waitress handed them menus and left to fetch their drinks. "Do you want to get a burger?" Tessa asked, her eyes bright. "Perhaps, but it seems that they have specials that look tasty. Prime rib with mashed potatoes and broccoli sounds appealing," he admitted. Now that the prices were 3 times less expensive than they were at the seafood place.
Sounds good. I'll get the same, Tessa decided. Sally Daly rushed down the street, her heart pounding. That stupid trick with the body wash didn't work. In fact, she doubted that moving any of his items would work. Sally pounded on the door of a 1-story ranch house. Moments later, her father-in-law, Greg, opened the door. Judging by the full facial hair, he hadn't been out in days. His t-shirt was wrinkled and his boxers had stains on them. Sally took in a breath. "Greg, we have a problem," Sally announced.
"It's not a good time, Sally. Marcy and I are discussing starting a business with our share of the money,"
he explained. "That's the problem. Thomas got married," Sally reported with aggravation. Greg's entire face lit up.
"Really? My son got married? Why wasn't I invited to the wedding?"
Greg demanded. "I think he's embarrassed by you," Sally hotly snapped.
"Embarrassed? I don't think that my son has the capacity to be embarrassed by anyone," he pointed out.
"You do realize that if Thomas gets the money, you won't get your share, right?" She nearly shouted, thinking that this idiot was dense.
"You're right. Thomas would most likely give me more if I tell him that I want to start a business. In fact, he would probably run it from me. Don't you worry, Tripp and you can go in on the business as well."
It was obvious Greg was truly useless. "Troy came calling yesterday. He wants his money," she reminded Greg.
"I told my son not to gamble on the island. There is no escape,"
he lectured. Sally stomped her foot, about to lose her temper. "Thomas will not pay off Tripp's debt. He would just tell us to turn in Troy to the authorities," she complained.
"Right. So maybe Tripp should turn Troy in to the authorities. Gambling is illegal on Portum Island. That's why I did it in the human world,"
Greg said. "Are you out of your mind? The minute Tripp turns Troy in, they will arrest him too," she cried.
"Maybe he should do some time. Nobody asked him to gamble. He should have known better considering what happened to me."
"You left us penniless. He had no choice," Sally shot back.
"And yet Thomas managed,"
Greg replied before shutting the door in her face. Chapter 10. 3 days after attending the business seminar, Tessa rushed down the stairs. She was hoping to check on Julia, but she didn't know who the woman was married to. Tripp was eating an overflowing bowl of cereal while Sally was delicately eating a grapefruit. Toby, who was honestly a sweet kid, was nowhere in sight. Thomas glared at the freeloading couple and slammed down his travel mug.
"Enough is enough, Sally. I know that you emptied my coffee grounds into the trash can. You also left the milk out, rearranged my closet, and moved the body wash. I had the items that you fiddled with tested. Your DNA was on the items," he yelled.
Wow. Thomas was obviously at his wit's end. Tessa supposed that she was going to let this play out.
"Oh, and by the way, your central air has been fixed. Get the hell out of my house."
Tripp appeared surprised by his brother's fit, and so was she. But Tessa didn't have the heart to soothe him. She also thought that the couple had worn out their welcome. "You got our central air fixed?" Tripp cautiously asked.
"Yes. Now get out,"
Thomas ordered. "That whore is the reason why you are acting like this," Sally yelled. "Thomas, that whore—"
"Her name is Tessa, and if you speak like that about her again, you will not be welcomed in this house,"
Tessa's husband warned. Sally stood, snatched up her grapefruit, and ran up the stairs. Tripp's annoyed expression told Tessa that Tripp really hadn't wanted to leave. What a freeloader.
Don't worry about paying me back. I took it upon myself to pay for it, and I also placed a few staples in your fridge. It was empty. Trip, are you being paid fairly? Thomas demanded. Trip grinned. As soon as Tessa gets her hooks into you, you'll see. Women love spending a lot of money, Trip said before getting to his feet. Moments later, Sally went into the room, dragging the suitcase behind her. Tessa noted that Trip hadn't bothered taking the suitcase from his wife, but she was relieved when the annoying couple made their way out of the house, the front door slamming shut behind them. Tessa let out a relieved sigh as Thomas stalked toward her, his eyes filled with desire. Finally, he said before scooping her up into his arms. She definitely didn't have the time for a romantic interlude, but damn it, he had just kicked his family out of the house. Her husband deserved some kind of reward. You had her fingerprints examined? That's so awesome, Tessa complimented. That was a fib. I had a suspicion that you weren't behind the pranks, so process of elimination told me that it must have been Sally. She was never fond of me, and believe me, the feeling is mutual. Besides, I just wanted to be alone with my wife, Thomas explained before rushing to the bedroom. Thomas was very thorough. He began by gently taking off her clothes and laying Tessa in the center of their bed. He eyed her with hunger that nearly gutted her. Tessa wanted to close her eyes from the intensity. It made her feel so vulnerable. But she forced herself to gaze right back at Thomas. He stripped, which was quite the show, before his lips began exploring her skin. She was a trembling mess as he began familiarizing himself with her sensitive spots. When his lips met hers, Tessa wrapped her arms around his neck. He pulled back, his eyes making her feel so wanted that it made her heart ache. Her green eyes bored into his, hoping that she could convey how much she was starting to care for him. Then they moved together, becoming one. Tessa had been with a man or two before Thomas, but never experienced such a strong connection. As they moved together, her entire world became filled with passion and love. It's about time you showed up, Kevin complained as Tessa walked into Stone's Cafe, their meeting spot. Esperanza had her laptop in front of her and was typing. It had been decided that she would give the presentation, since the spa was her brainchild. Kevin slid an iced mocha latte to her, and she took an enthusiastic sip. Well, Kevin, you see, Thomas and I had... You know what? Kevin interrupted. I don't care. All you happy women are getting on my nerves. You could just get a mail-order bride, Tessa suggested, as Esperanza looked up at her. Tessa, I love the idea of the types of baths that women and men could take. But do you think we should start simple? I mean, neither of us are knowledgeable of what is required for such a thing. Esperanza pointed out. Sure, let's put that on the back burner if it's too complicated. Tessa agreed. At this point, she only wanted this process to end as quickly as possible. Kevin, we aren't doing a strip club in the spa, Esperanza warned. Tessa nearly spit out her latte. Seriously, Kev. You thought that someone could have a strip club in a spa. Tessa had to admit that it sounded like a good idea, but she figured that the island folk would have a conniption if they heard that someone was trying to start a strip club. She decided that she would submit a fake application to see how the council's vote would go. Figures. That means we can't have your golf course, Kevin fired back. Fair enough, Esperanza agreed. I still think that the men should get something. Maybe all the masseuses could be shirtless, he decided. Don't think so. I don't think I could do something like that, Tessa reasoned. Kevin nodded. So, Tessa, how are things going with Thomas? Kevin inquired. Tessa's mind flashed back to the time that the two had spent together. Her heart warmed at the thought of her husband. Maybe she could fix something tasty for dinner. Usually Thomas made a stew or casserole for them. She could look at what was in the freezer to decide on a meal. With that in her head, Tessa continued going over the presentation with her friends. Thomas rushed to the processing center wanting to pick up the steaks that he had ordered online. He opened the door and noted the fairly empty establishment. His timing was right. His acquaintance Marcus waved him over, a confused expression on his face. "Thomas, did you let a 5-year-old play with your tablet?" he inquired, which made Thomas bristle. "What do you mean?" he asked his friend. "Well, you ordered $500 worth of groceries? Before you panic, I sent most of them back. But I'm afraid that you're stuck with the lobsters." "Sorry, man," he said. "What? I didn't order any lobsters. Tessa wouldn't do something like that, would she?" Thomas asked his more worldly friend. Marcus shook his head. "I doubt it. I haven't met Tessa, but she's friends with my sister-in-law Esperanza. I trust her judgment," he reasoned. Thomas nodded, having the feeling that the owner of the processing center was correct. "Is there a way to tell who tampered with my order?" Thomas wondered. Marcus frowned. "To be honest, I don't think so. Just change your password and tell no one," he ordered. Thomas nodded and picked up his food. He was creeped out by the wiggling lobsters that he most certainly did not want to cook. On a whim, Thomas left the processing center and made his way down the sidewalk. He hated doing anything spontaneous, but figured that he had to do something with the lobsters. He spotted a mop of red hair up ahead and smiled. Tessa was practically running down the sidewalk. She stopped and pressed her fingers to her sides. Thomas supposed that she was out of breath. He chuckled to himself, glad that her brief respite gave him the chance to catch up to her. "What's in the box?" Tessa asked as soon as Thomas stepped up beside her. "Steak and lobsters," he responded, which made Tessa's face pale. "Like ones that are still alive?" she squeaked. "Yes, Tessa, ones that are still alive. Someone ordered them along with my steak," he explained. "I didn't do that. Please don't make me cook them. They have to be boiled alive, and that's just... I can't," she confessed. "I'm thinking of dropping them off at Kendrick's. He loves lobster," Thomas confessed. "Who's Kendrick?" Tessa inquired. "He's the other man who ordered a mail-order bride. I want to say that—" "Hold on. Did you just call Kendrick by his first name?" Tessa teased. Thomas sighed. "Yes, Sonny, I can call people by their first names if they request it." Tessa smiled. "What is Kendrick like? Is he nice? Julia is quite shy," she warned. "He's a good man," Thomas reasoned. "He's not as charming as Marcus, but he's friendly enough, I suppose," Thomas responded. "Good. Julia was afraid that her husband would hurt her. I feel terrible that I haven't had a chance to check on her," Tessa regretfully said. "We can check on her now. We'll give Kendrick the lobsters and leave. Who knows what he has planned?" Chapter 11. Thomas rang the doorbell to a modest 2-story house next to his own. Tessa groaned at the thought that Julia had been next door the entire time. The door opened and a tall man with dark hair peered out. His eyes lit up when he spotted them. "Thomas, Tessa, how are you both?" the man asked. "Kendrick, we are well. Actually, I'm slightly agitated because someone tampered with my groceries." "Someone ordered 2 lobsters. Would you like them?" Thomas asked. "Of course. I can pay you for them," Kendrick offered. "No, that won't be necessary,"
Thomas said before taking the steaks out of the box and handing Kendrick the lobsters. "Want to come in? Julia is baking cookies," he informed them. Thomas had no idea if the offer was sincere. He was about to say that maybe next time they could meet up when Tessa spoke. "We'd love to. I wanted to check on Julia anyways," Tessa insisted. Kendrick smiled and they followed him into the house. Julia's face lit up when she spotted Tessa. "Julia, looking good," Tessa complimented before pulling the shorter woman into a hug. Now that her friend didn't smell like a garbage truck, Tessa could really appreciate her beauty. Julia had golden brown skin, dark brown hair, and dark brown eyes. Julia had gained a bit of weight, displaying the promise of curves. "Julia, you clean up well," Tessa said as soon as she pulled back from the hug. "You are being polite, dear. She looks like an underfed rat," a woman hotly responded before stepping into the kitchen. Tessa's eyes widened as the tall, voluptuous woman shoved Julia to the side. The stranger's eyes were assessing, taking in every inch of Tessa's body. "I'm Kendrick's guardian, Lucy," she introduced. Lucy was a tall woman with pleasing features. She wore a blue casual dress with white sandals. "I take it you don't approve of us mail-order brides?" Tessa assumed. "Of course I approve of mail-order brides. My Kendrick isn't what you would call a ladies' man. He is kind of stupid and doesn't do much with his life. Don't get me started on my niece, Jill. She is more hopeless than he is, holding on to the dream of keeping an orphanage afloat. She's also very picky about who she sends kids to. Aunt Lucy, leave. I think we've had enough of you," Kendrick demanded. "You got your manners from your father, young man," Aunt Lucy huffed. "But the stupid ideals come from your headstrong mother." She brushed past Tessa and stormed out of the house. Tessa could sense that Thomas was a bit uneasy, but she was thoroughly entertained by the spectacle, glad that the drama had nothing to do with her. "Did we come at the wrong time?" Thomas inquired, awkwardly shifting the box from hand to hand as his eyes stayed glued on the kitchen floor. "Nah, Thomas. You know, spontaneity is a good thing. Julia, have you prepared lobsters before?" Kendrick asked hopefully. "Yes. Just put them on the kitchen table and I can get started on them. Tessa, do you like seafood?" Julia wondered. Not really. Well, none of us are a fan of how lobsters are boiled alive. I'm a bit squeamish," Tessa admitted, which made Julia nod with understanding. "It isn't for everyone. Well, I'll go start boiling the water." "We would really want the both of you to stay for dinner," Kendrick confessed. "What else is in that box?" "Steak," Thomas replied. "I'd like to cook your steak if you don't mind," Julia shyly said. "I love to cook." "Since I'm not sure about how I feel about cooking, go right ahead," Tessa enthusiastically responded. Thomas probably knew by now that his wife always got her way, because he placed the box on the kitchen table. "Go sit in the living room. I'll be with you in a moment," Kendrick instructed. Thomas took Tessa's hand and led her to the living room. Out of instinct, Tessa covered her ears. Her imagination was running wild. She could just picture the little critters jumping from the pot and Kendrick dumping them back in. What if they screamed as they were being boiled alive? Tessa was no vegetarian. She loved a good burger. But if she actually had to slaughter the cow, she wouldn't bother. Thomas wrapped his arms around her and she pressed her face to his chest. Tessa knew that she was being ridiculous, but she was relieved that her husband wasn't telling her so. He ran his fingers through her hair and the soothing action relaxed her. "It's okay, Sonny. It'll be over soon," Thomas assured her. But the lobsters were forgotten when memories of their time in bed flashed through Tessa's mind. Perhaps they could slip out and...
Aren't you two quite the couple? Kendrick commented. Tessa and Thomas reluctantly pulled apart and eyed the smiling man. Just to assure us more squeamish people, the lobsters have been boiled. Tessa sighed, relieved that the critters weren't going to break loose and run around the kitchen. Funny, Tessa huffed. What? Come on, Tessa, you live on Portum Island. We love lobster here, he proclaimed. Not everyone loves lobster. I don't know the exact statistics, but I'm sure if someone did a survey, it would be... Tessa planted a gentle kiss on Thomas's lips, interrupting his speech. She thought Thomas was so adorable, but wouldn't tell him so. It would infuriate Tessa if he brought that up during an argument. Thomas grinned down at her. Impatient to kiss, Sonny? He teased. I sure am, she told her husband as Julia rushed into the living room. For you non-lobster people, I have put your steaks in the oven. I'm so glad that you are staying for dinner, Julia announced. Tessa grinned at Julia. We are excited to taste your cooking, Tessa said, though she didn't mind leaving. It was clear that Julia had a husband who was protective of her, and getting Thomas into bed seemed more interesting than sitting through dinner. Good, sit, Julia insisted, gesturing to the cozy couch which was complete with a throw blanket and plump pillows. Thomas sat beside Tessa as Julia turned on the television, allowing a local news station to play. Then she left the room and returned with 2 bottled waters that Tessa and Thomas gladly accepted. Kendrick stayed with the couple as Julia worked in the kitchen. How did you and Thomas meet? Tessa wondered. We met 25 years ago. Thomas was dating my sister, Lily. She's into smart men. Well, Thomas was still a cop back then. We were going on a double date with Tripp's wife, Sally. She used to be my woman. So glad that didn't work out. So as we were leaving the restaurant, Sally started a fight with me and stormed off. I walked to my car alone, and 5 men came out of nowhere. You should have seen Thomas take them down. He didn't even need a gun, Kendrick explained. Did Sally set you up? Tessa asked, her throat growing dry. For what reason? It wasn't like I had any money to spare. The men turned out to be 5 of the Addams brothers. I guess one of their girlfriends lied about me coming on to her, Kendrick reported. The oh-so-famous Addams brothers, Tessa commented with a sigh. Do either of you know anything about Emma Addams? She seems attached to Asher. Of course she is, Kendrick chuckled. Brad Addams is a cheapskate. Thomas, remember the time Lily threw a potluck and Brad brought over week-old chili? Yes. That was the night that Lily told me that she'd much rather see Brad than continue wasting her time on me, Thomas grudgingly responded. A hint of jealousy hit Tessa's gut. Are you still into Lily? Tessa demanded. No, it has been 25 years since we last dated. She is happily married to Mr. Graham, a businessman. We don't speak. I guess she finds it awkward. But I'm okay with seeing her, Thomas admitted. I think Lily felt stupid for dumping you for Brad, Kendrick reasoned. You were nice to her. It seemed like the words didn't even touch Thomas. Thankfully, Kendrick changed the subject, asking Tessa about movies that she liked, her life in New Jersey, and the business she hoped to start with Kevin and Esperanza. Julia called them into the kitchen a while later for dinner. This is delicious, Julia, Tessa commented before taking another bite of the baby potatoes that were on her plate. The steaks that Julia had cooked for Thomas and Tessa were juicy and tender. I love to cook, Julia shyly said as she took a sip of her water. The lobster is delicious, Kendrick commented. Yeah, thanks Sally for that, Thomas said, annoyed. I know damn well Tessa wouldn't order lobster. Yeah, she could barely stomach the idea of you cooking them, Julia, Kendrick chuckled. Oh, stop it. It isn't my fault that I root for lobsters, Tessa said. But you don't root for steaks, I see.
Julia teased. Touché, Tessa called before eating another bite of steak. So, Julia, what are you doing tomorrow? Tessa asked, curious. Laundry, cleaning, cooking. And I think I should look at some clothing options. I can sew, Julia revealed. Jules, have fun. You can't just do housework every day, Kendrick protested. If it's all right, we can do something, Julia offered. Why don't you teach me how to sew? Tessa decided. She vaguely knew how to sew and figured it would be handy. Oh, I'd love to do that, Julia excitedly said. I'm sure you would. Jules, just take things easy, Kendrick insisted. Tessa got the sense that Julia was doing everything to earn her keep. Kendrick would have to do something to make his wife feel secure in their relationship. Tessa sincerely hoped that her friend would be as happy as she was with Thomas. Chapter 12. Tessa was nervous as hell. She walked down the stairs smiling at Thomas. It had been a few weeks since Sally left them, and wouldn't they know, nothing was going sideways. Thomas and Tessa did bicker a bit, but nothing of her husband's went missing. That meant that Sally had been the culprit. But that story that Kendrick told Tessa made her worry about Sally daily. That woman was no good, and it was clear that she had something against Thomas. But what? And damn it, how was she supposed to worry about this drama on the day of her presentation? Hungry? Thomas asked as he pulled freshly baked muffins from the oven. I made your favorite. Tessa smiled at Thomas as he placed one of the chocolate chip muffins on a plate. He poured Tessa a cup of milk and she sat at the table. Tessa took a delicate bite of the muffin and grinned. Thank you. This is delicious. Are you going to the assembly? Tessa asked, curious. It wasn't like she was presenting, but it would have been nice if Thomas were there. I wouldn't miss it. Mrs. Lawson is doing the presentation. Is that correct? Thomas asked uncertainly. You mean Esperanza, Tessa corrected. But Thomas merely shook his head. You know that I'm not all that familiar with Mrs. Lawson, so I'm not comfortable with calling her by her first name, he reasoned. So have you heard from Sally? Tessa asked, her stomach squeezing. She had good spidey senses and was sure that the woman was up to something. I call my brother every Monday. He hasn't been answering my calls, Thomas responded, pain briefly flashing in his eyes. I'm sorry, Tom. I guess Tripp is distracted? Do you want to go to their house for a visit? Tessa hopefully asked. She wanted to do some snooping. I suppose I should visit Tripp. I also need to introduce you to my parents. I wanted to wait a bit to do so. My parents can be exhausting, he warned Tessa. No one is as exhausting as my father and his woman, Gail, Tessa huffed before taking another bite of her muffin. The bad singer? Tessa nodded since she had her mouth full. Thomas chuckled before taking a sip of his coffee. What makes your parents so difficult? Tessa wondered. They were once wealthy, but my father loved gambling in the human world. He lost everything. My mother took to drinking, and all I had was my education. I worked hard for years until I could afford this house. Then I bought my brother's and my parents' houses. They have no mortgages, Thomas explained, and Tessa's heart warmed. This incredible man was generous and thoughtful. She stood and walked over to Thomas, who was in a sleek gray suit. She leaned down and tenderly kissed his forehead. You are the sweetest man. Your family is lucky to have you. Tessa didn't add that Sally and Tripp did not deserve his loyalty. I'm glad you think so, Sonny. Maybe we should head over to the administration building, Thomas suggested, and Tessa reluctantly agreed. Knock 'em dead, Tessa said as Esperanza walked past her. She was sitting in the front row, sandwiched between Kevin and Thomas. Esperanza looked nervous enough, which didn't make Tessa confident. Kevin frowned at Tessa. Does she have stage fright? Kevin whispered. Tessa shrugged. I guess we'll find out, Tessa said as she gripped Thomas's hand. Esperanza fiddled with the laptop that the council provided. Tessa stared at the 21 men that sat in a long table off to the side of the room. They seemed disinterested, as if Esperanza was boring them. Well, that wasn't a promising sight. Tessa eyed her friend's outfit and thought that the long black dress made her look official but sexy at the same time. Good morning, everyone. I'm Esperanza Lawson, and my business proposal is... A buzzer sounded out of nowhere. The man sitting at the head of the table stood. Who has a question? The dark-skinned man asked. Tessa shifted in her seat, seeing that the waitress from the stuffy seafood place was standing. Judging by Esperanza's face, she had no idea who she was. Tessa forced her overactive brain to think back. She recalled that Thomas called her Mrs. Lee. It says on your slide that you are starting a spa. Are you retaliating against Emma Adams? The waitress challenged. No, I'm starting a spa because I'm familiar with most of what is done at a spa. Back in Jersey, I got a license for doing hair and nails. Most? Really, Esperanza, you can't say that you're familiar with most of the aspects of the business, Tessa thought. But can you offer massages? Ms. Lee challenged. My partner Tessa is a licensed massage therapist, also. What is Kevin's purpose? She hotly asked. Kevin is a barber and... Exactly. Most spas don't have a barber. Why not? Esperanza asked. Men could get massages as well. Enough! The head councilman roared. Let this young lady present her business. Esperanza's presentation took 2 hours. It was only supposed to take 20 minutes, but everyone seemed to have a question for Tessa's partner. It seemed like the poor woman was going to collapse under the weight. As soon as the head councilman told Esperanza to exit, Kevin and Tessa followed her out of the room. Tessa's blood was about to boil. What the hell was wrong with those outspoken, annoying audience members? Who were those people, Kevin? Tessa demanded. Kevin frowned. Those people were all of Emma Adams' friends, he answered. Figured that the crazy broad would cause some trouble for her. If it hadn't been for Tessa's preoccupation with Sally, she would have thought about hunting down the woman. Oh, really? Esperanza snapped. Really? You are married to her ex-fiancé. Maybe she's upset about that, Kevin suggested. Tessa rolled her eyes. Dating Asher didn't make him her property, Tessa protested. Then the door opened and Asher came out, his eyes on the ground. It would seem that some of the council members felt that your presentation wasn't as detailed as they would have liked. They have requested for you to make your presentation in 2 weeks. The decision wasn't unanimous. Most of us agreed. This is all your fault, Esperanza hissed. If you just talked to Emma, none of this would have happened. Since I got here, she has been showing up, disrupting our lives, and you take the passive approach. Now it is going to cost me a job. I hope you're happy, Esperanza shouted before storming out of the building. This is hopeless. We are only going to run into the same problem when Esperanza presents again, Kevin said as Thomas exited. No, you won't. I will assist you, Thomas announced as he wrapped his arm around Tessa. She leaned into him, his warmth comforting. Really, Thomas? It doesn't matter what you do, the Adams family will tamper with our success, Kevin warned, a defeated expression on his face. No, they won't. Not if you invite 198 of your closest friends, Thomas reasoned. And make sure that they come before Emma's friends do. What a devious son of a gun. Tessa smiled as she cupped Thomas's cheeks. I like a guy who knows how to follow the rules. It means that you are a good problem solver," Tessa commented before gently placing a soft kiss on his lips. Kevin whistled at the public display of affection. Thomas pulled away from Tessa and caressed her face. "Glad that my solution made you happy. But I'm sure that you would have come up with it," he said before facing Kevin. "Kevin, you should consider getting a mail-order bride. I think Cassandra has matched people perfectly thus far," Thomas commented. That praise warmed Tessa on the inside. She grabbed Thomas's hand and squeezed. "You think so? I could use the company of a female. It would be nice if I can find someone that can help me work at the spa," Kevin decided. "Thomas, how did you get a mail-order bride?" "Asher has the list going. You can sign up," Thomas informed the other man. Kevin nodded. "Let me go find Asher. He better help me," he said before storming back into the council room. Tessa smiled up at Thomas, who gave her a tender look. "Want to go home?" he inquired. "I thought you had a seminar to teach this afternoon," Tessa reminded him. "I can cancel it if you need me," he offered, which warmed her from the inside. She smirked at him. "I'll be fine. I'll visit Julia. Don't worry about me. A hot bath, some good food, and a cuddle with you will make everything better," Tessa said before giving her man one more kiss on the lips. Tessa hungered to spend some time between the sheets with him, but she would have to wait. She left the building, the sunshine practically burning her skin. She headed home, her disappointment finally catching up with her. Damn it all, Tessa had to sit through another presentation. Chapter 13. It had been 2 days since Tessa's failed presentation. Thomas provided his wife with detailed notes of improvements that her group should consider making. Then he sent an email to 300 of the people that had contacted him to take private courses. He merely suggested that they should attend the spa presentation in order to get an idea of what they were expected to do. After sending the emails, he closed his laptop and stood. It was time for a lunch break. Thomas opened the mini fridge in his office and pulled out the salad he made. He settled at his desk to eat the meal. Thomas had just taken his first bite when his office door opened. Tripp stood in the doorway, an embarrassed expression on his face. His brother looked as if he had lost a good 10 pounds. Thomas let out a loud groan. "You need grocery money again." This hadn't been the first time his brother had been irresponsible with managing his finances. "I just need to borrow a few bucks," Tripp said as he collapsed into the chair in front of the desk. Thomas opened his drawer and pulled out $300 and handed it to his brother. Tripp looked at him resolute. It was a strange way to look at him, but Thomas didn't feel like dwelling on it. "How are things going with Tessa?" Tripp inquired. "Usually you take the money and leave," Thomas noted as he took a bite. It was as if something sour had been poured on his salad. Did he use expired salad dressing? "I take it that Tessa is a bad cook." "She has adequate cooking skills," Thomas defended, though he wasn't sure why Tripp had made that assumption. "Last night she made a delicious pot roast. I suspect that she has been taking lessons from Julia." Tripp's guilty expression made him pause. "I noticed that Kevin has been spending a lot of time with Tessa. They were cozy yesterday at this." "Tripp, what are you implying?" Thomas slowly asked as he decided that his backup lunch would taste much better. "Nothing. I just want to look out for you, that's all," Tripp assured before abruptly leaving the room. Thomas sighed, glaring at his stupid salad. What a waste. He dumped the thing inside the trash and decided on eating the peanut butter and jelly sandwich that was in his fridge. Thomas was relieved when he realized that it was the end of the day. He had a blistering headache and his stomach didn't feel much better.
The plan was to head home and take a few vitamins. He stood and nearly collapsed when a disorienting bout of dizziness took over him. His left hand rested on the top of his desk as he waited for his world to stop spinning. He straightened as Asher entered the room, the typical politician megawatt smile across his face. "Thomas, I wanted to let you know that the council wishes to question you about your mail-order bride. They want to make sure that your union is going well," the councilman informed him. Thomas wanted to nod, but his head was too heavy. "I think I am falling ill," Thomas hoarsely said as he fell backward. He wasn't sure if he hit the floor. He was out like a light before he made impact with the unforgiving ground. Tessa placed the pan of lasagna into the oven. She had found the recipe online, and it was easy enough. Then she eyed her cell phone again. Her father was probably married by now, which hurt. Her gut told her that she wasn't wrong about Gail, but Tessa also knew that her father could make his own choices. Thomas was a lot like her, constantly trying to save a hopeless family member. She knew through watching him step in whatever trip needed him that his pattern was an unhealthy one. Tessa sighed and decided she might as well see how he was. Her father had called a few times, but Tessa had hit the ignore button every time. Tessa plopped down on one of the kitchen chairs and picked her cell phone off the table. With determined fingers, she selected her father's contact and called him. Moments later, an anxious voice filled her ears. "Tessa, damn it, where are you? How dare you embarrass Gail and I by not making it to the wedding?" he demanded. It occurred to Tessa that he wasn't anxious about her whereabouts, but only cared that she had humiliated him in public. "Do you ever think about other people? How do you think it made Gail feel when you weren't at our wedding? Gail's right, you only care about my money. You are just angry that Gail is getting everything. I thought that you would be happy for me." Tessa's eyes filled with tears as his words began to strike at her heart. "For goodness sake, you just can't stand when I'm happy." The front door slammed open and Thomas staggered into the kitchen. The noise startled her so much that the tears stopped falling. Tessa glanced at her husband, who collapsed into the chair across from her. "You never listen to me," her father said as she put her phone on speaker. Thomas was pale, and sweat glistened on his face. Her father could rant as she made sure that her husband was all right. She walked over to Thomas and gently touched a fingertip to his forehead. He seemed warmer than usual. She spotted the pharmacy bag that he dropped on the floor and picked it up. "You made Gail cry on her own wedding day." "Thomas, what's wrong?" Tessa softly asked as she placed the bag of medicine on the table. "I ate bad salad," he responded. "Can you please get me some water?" Tessa nodded and rushed over to the fridge to fetch him a bottled water. Thomas moaned in delight when he took a sip of water. Meanwhile, her father was continuing with his diatribe. "From day one, I have loved you. I don't understand why you couldn't support me." Thomas finished the water and asked Tessa for another bottle, which she promptly gave him. As she watched Thomas, her heart ached. She hated watching her man in pain. "What was wrong with the salad?" Tessa softly asked as she sat down beside him. "There was an all-natural weed-killing product in it," he reported. "Sally," Tessa cursed, her temper nearly blowing over. "She did this to you. I will make her pay. As soon as you're better, I will give her a piece of my mind. I bet she'll accuse me of putting the weed killer in your salad." Thomas groaned and rubbed his head. "I think so, too. Why is she torturing us like this?" Thomas asked. Before Tessa could list out a few reasons, Thomas glanced in the direction of her phone. "Daddy, dearest," was still yelling. "And give me your phone." Tessa stood and did what he requested. Then she tuned into what her father was saying. "You are ungrateful and worthless. You couldn't even make it through college. You are..." Mr. McDonald, that is enough, Thomas boomed, his voice powerful despite the poisoning. Who are you? Tessa's father demanded. I am your son-in-law, Thomas, and I am utterly disgusted with your behavior. It would seem that you have lost common sense. You trust a woman half your age more than your daughter. I've known Tessa to be honest and loyal. I know for a fact that she spent her life protecting you from your idiocy. You tell me this. When you are sick, does Gail care for you? Does she take any interest in your life? How long did she date you before marrying you? You don't know the first thing about Tessa, her father warned. No, you are the one that doesn't know anything about Tessa. Now I'm hanging up the phone because your shouting is giving me a headache, Thomas said before hanging up the phone. Tessa began sobbing when she realized that her father was truly lost to her. Thomas pulled her into his lap and held her. His hands rubbed her back as she trembled. Her arms wrapped around his neck as she thought about how lucky she was to have him. She held him tight as she cried for an entirely different reason. Sally wanted to hurt her husband, and she wasn't sure why. No, Tessa finally realized. Sally did not want to harm Thomas. The sister-in-law from hell wanted Tessa gone. She wanted to do some snooping so that she could figure out why that witch wanted Tessa to leave him. Did she want Thomas to herself? That didn't make any sense. It appeared as though she couldn't stand him. Then why? Sonny, what do you have in the oven? Thomas asked, curiosity in his tone. Lasagna? She responded as she pulled away. Tessa squeaked as she heard her phone alarm chiming. She rushed over to the oven and turned it off. She peered into the oven and was glad that the lasagna was mostly intact. Tessa put on the oven mitts and swiftly took dinner out of the oven and placed the pan on the stovetop. Do you think that you can eat? She asked her husband. Yes, I'll need a lot of food and a lot of water, he explained. Tessa nodded and walked over to Thomas. She dropped a kiss onto his forehead. Let's wait for the food to cool down, and then we'll eat. Chapter 14. The next morning, Tessa walked down the stairs and entered the kitchen. Thomas was sitting at the kitchen table sipping a cup of coffee. He was not in his suit. Instead, he wore a t-shirt and board shorts. His eyes were red-rimmed, the headache making it difficult for him to sleep. Tessa smiled at him as she poured orange juice and joined him at the table. She reached out and squeezed his arm. You called in sick? She gently asked. Had to. My head feels like a hammer smacking into it. Thomas groaned. Is there anything I can do for you? Tessa wondered just as the doorbell rang. Tessa groaned and got to her feet, having the feeling that she wouldn't like the trouble that her visitor brought. She opened the door and a terrified-looking Toby was quivering before her. His eyes were wide with fear. Tessa noted the bruise on his cheek. Come in, she insisted. Toby entered and immediately began breathing heavily. He was probably on the verge of a panic attack, Tessa thought to herself. Aunt Tessa, Mom and Dad are in trouble, he announced. Why don't you take a seat? Tessa suggested. Toby listened and she retrieved a bottled water for the boy. Why do I have the feeling that my headache is going to get worse? Thomas groaned. This guy Troy is in my house. He told my father that he won't leave until he gives him $600,000, Toby reported. We aren't the richest people on the island. Why shake up your dad? Thomas wondered. Because he owes him a gambling debt. Mom is on her way here. I guess she's trying to prevent Tessa from staying, something about a $25 million inheritance that Uncle Thomas is supposed to receive on his next birthday. Tessa's stomach twisted at what Thomas had yet to figure out.
What inheritance? Toby, your mother is mistaken. My parents would have told me about an inheritance if...
What were the stipulations of the inheritance? Tessa demanded, her heart sinking. Uncle Thomas would have to be married by his 51st birthday? If he wasn't, then the money would go to my dad. Thomas clutched his head in agony.
So he poisoned me with weed killer?
That was Mom's idea. She figured that if Tessa made the salad, then you would blame her when you got poisoned, his nephew explained. So Troy is holding up your father for $600,000? Tessa slowly asked, a brow arched. Yes, he... Where does the money need to be transferred? Tessa demanded. She knew exactly how to get the money, although she was too prideful to go to this source on a good day. Love made people do crazy things. Tessa was worried that something else would happen to hurt Thomas. Damn it, she wasn't sure if she could live without the man, not now that she had grown attached to him. Toby pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket. I asked Troy where to send the money. Mom doesn't know I did that. I don't get it, Uncle Thomas. Why didn't Mom and Dad ask you for the money? Toby wondered as he handed Tessa the paper. She eyed the account and picked up her phone.
Because they knew I wouldn't pay a gambling debt. It's against the law. Tessa, we have to turn those people into the authorities, Thomas ordered.
Maybe paying the gambling debt will keep you safe. It's obvious that one of Sally's stunts may kill you. Thomas groaned, obviously too sick to argue with Tessa. She clicked on her mother's number and waited for her to pick up. Tessa Joy Daly, you got married and didn't tell me? Her mother cried, which made Tessa blink. How did you know? You do realize that all marriages are public knowledge, right? She replied. I guess so. So how are you? Do I have grandbabies yet? I heard your sorry father chased you away. That disgusting bastard. When he forced me to give him full custody, he said it was best for you. And after throwing a huge stink about keeping you, he throws you away for a tone-deaf idiot? Gwen Shepherd was a self-centered woman, but at least she cared enough to do research on Tessa. Mom, I need a favor. Tessa slowly began. How much is it? I have a feeling that your husband isn't rolling in the green. What does he need, a new kidney? For goodness sake, couldn't this woman shut up already? Tessa kept her head on straight, not wanting to upset her mother. Well, Dad cut me off. I guess he was mad that I didn't get along with Gail, Tessa said. What? Oh, no, he doesn't. I'll be sure to call him and tell him how lousy he is. And don't you worry about Gail. She will be gone by next year. Then you can keep on babysitting your father, she insisted. Great, Tessa said, happy that she was probably going to get more money out of this fiasco than the $600,000. Now give me your husband's bank account number. Tessa gave the woman Tom's bank information and then hung up. My mother will provide us the capital. Then we can...
We aren't paying off his debt. Tripp should know better than to gamble. I'll make a call and...
Please, Uncle Tom, save my parents. If you turn them in, they will go to jail, Toby pleaded.
Toby, they did something wrong. Your father needs help. You do know that if he is bailed out, he'll continue gambling, Tom warned. Your grandfather didn't get any help after his debts were paid off. He had to go to prison, Thomas said. Tessa had had enough. Toby had to be told how things were. Toby, you're 15, right? Tessa asked. Yes, Toby responded. Here is what happened. Your mother attempted to cause Thomas and I to fight.
Tessa began before informing her nephew of the annoyances that both Tessa and Thomas had to go through. Her poor husband being poisoned with a weed killer got Tessa all choked up. But then she finished with words that had a profound effect on the kid. Your parents will do whatever it takes to pay off your father's gambling debt, even if it means hurting your uncle. So it will get worse? Toby asked as Thomas's phone dinged. Thomas glanced down at it and his eyes bulged. Your mother just transferred $5 million into my account, Thomas said, disbelief in his voice. So now what? Tessa asked, conflicted. On one hand, she wanted to pay the goons off to get rid of them. On the other hand, Sally might never stop. Tessa would support whatever decision her husband made. Her husband groaned and got to his feet. Let me go make a call, he said before stumbling out of the room. Tessa sighed and glanced at Toby, who seemed crushed. Uncle Tom deserves to be happy, he said, his eyes hard. I don't want my dad to go to jail, but what else can we do? His hopeless expression made her ache. Tessa couldn't relate to what Toby was going through, but she knew that her nephew was hurting. I'm sorry, kid, Tessa said as the doorbell rang again. Tessa sighed and opened the door. Sally stood in the doorway, a scowl on her twisted face. If you know what's best for Thomas, you will leave, she warned. Pack your bags. I spoke to Cassandra and she said that a divorce could be arranged, so now step outside, Tessa, or else you'll be sorry. Tessa nearly peed her pants when Sally pointed a handgun at her. She shook, not accustomed to being threatened. Look, Sally, I can help you, Tessa forced out. My mother is rich. I can pay the gambling debt. Sally shook her head before rolling her eyes. You think I care about my husband's gambling debts? Oh no, I want what I was promised. My husband told me that the money would be ours. Then you came and ruined everything, she snapped. Tessa bit her lip, trying to think of a solution. You know that Toby's here, right? If you hurt me, what would he think? Tessa asked, hoping that a mother's instinct would override her greed. If you care about Toby, you'll leave, she countered. What about Thomas? We care about one another. Tessa pleaded. I care about my own comforts. Now walk out of the door and go to Cassandra. Sally fell forward and Tessa quickly jumped out of the way. Sally fell to the ground, the gun trapped underneath her body. Julia stood there, a scowl on her face. She held a baseball bat in both hands. Julia? Tessa asked, surprised. We look out for one another, don't we? She asked, determination in her eyes. Of course. Tessa squeaked, trying to keep a straight face. Holy crap, Julia just saved her butt. I called the police. They will be here soon, she said as footsteps pounded down the stairs. It looked like Thomas was on his way. Chapter 15. Thomas needed time alone to process the situation. He walked into the room that he shared with his wife. Touches of her were all over the place where they slept. She made the bed in such a manner that there were lumps in places. Her sketchbook was on the nightstand. Her shoes were strewn all over the floor, no matter how many times he put them away. Her closet door was open, revealing clothing hanging half on hangers. Thomas sat on the bed and rubbed his aching eyes. The changes over the last month were positive ones. He couldn't believe that Tripp was attempting to take the only color in his otherwise dull life away from him. Thomas was forced to realize that he couldn't live without Tessa. He loved the little terror that insisted on challenging everything he said. He held his cell phone in his hand. He could turn Tripp and Sally into the authorities, and they would be arrested and tried. Troy would also be put away, and the island would be better for it. With trembling fingers, Thomas decided to phone his old boss. "Blackhall," the gruff voice answered. "Mr. Blackhall, it's Thomas Daly. Please tell me that you're coming back. There was never a better detective than you, Thomas," the man complimented. "I'm afraid I've come to you with a problem," Thomas reluctantly said. "What kind of problem?" the other man demanded. "It would seem that there is an illegal gambling operation happening on the island. A man named Troy is an enforcer of sorts. He is holding my brother Tripp hostage until Sally and Toby find a way to pay his gambling debt," Thomas revealed. "Crap. Thomas, I will send someone to Tripp's house. Now, are you sure about retiring? It's been 5 years and you're married now, right?" Mr. Blackhall inquired. Thomas shuddered at the thought of returning to such a dangerous line of work. After he had been forced to kill a madman, he decided that the career wasn't for him. No one blamed him for defending the deranged man's family, but that didn't take away from his own guilt. "I'll help out if you are short-handed, but I'm happy with running seminars," Thomas said. "I'll send a deputy to interview Toby," Mr. Blackhall informed him. "I'll prepare my nephew," Thomas replied. "How is this mail-order bride thing working for you?" Mr. Blackhall inquired. "It worked out wonderfully. Tessa is perfect for me. She's like a bright light in my otherwise boring life," Thomas explained. "How did you get on this list? I thought Cassandra's business was a conditional situation," Mr. Blackhall said. "Speak to Councilman Asher Lawson," Thomas instructed. "Thank you, Thomas. I will do that later on," he said. "I'll rejoin my wife. I imagine that she doesn't want to deal with Toby all by herself. The crazy woman was actually going to pay Troy off," Thomas said. "Makes sense. But she can save her money. The man is going down," Mr. Blackhall declared before the line went dead. Thomas stood on unsteady legs and made his way back down to the kitchen. Thomas's heart nearly stopped when he saw the scene in front of him. Tessa was shaking, her face pale, while Julia was standing over a prone Sally. "Tom, she has a gun," Tessa shouted before speeding over to him. Thomas let out a surprised grunt when she collided with him, her arms wrapping around his waist. "She had a gun? She wanted me to leave you. Julia hit her with a bat. She could get back up. Julia, take her gun." Thomas eyed the woman holding the bat and noted that her eyes were hard. "If I see her twitch, I can hit her again," Julia calmly offered. Tessa pressed her face into Thomas's chest as his anger began to burn him from the inside out. That shrew wanted to take Tessa away from him. "I'll help you," Toby shakily said as he got to his feet. "Mom won't hurt Aunt Tessa." Sally let out a groan. "It isn't even loaded. That gun won't hurt anyone," Sally complained. "If you move, I will hit you," Julia threatened. "I don't trust you." "Ma'am, that won't be necessary," Deputy Morris said as he gently put a hand on Julia's shoulder. "You can put down the bat. I'm an officer of the law." "She has a gun," Julia warned. "For the millionth time, it isn't loaded," Sally insisted, before sitting up and clutching her head. Julia raised the bat, but Deputy Morris caught her wrist. He carefully shoved the woman behind him before lifting Sally up by her arms and tossing her away from the gun. He picked the gun up and checked the chamber, which was empty. Thomas breathed out a sigh of relief. "I told you that it was empty," Sally huffed. "In any case, you are under arrest," Deputy Morris said as he hauled Sally to her feet. Toby shook his head, shock in his dark eyes.
Thomas couldn't blame his nephew for his reaction. He probably didn't think that Sally would ever stoop that low. For pointing an empty gun at my sister-in-law? Sally demanded. Exactly, Deputy Morris said as he dragged the shrieking woman out of the house. Julia quickly entered the house, the bat in her hand. She leaned the bat against the doorway before collapsing into the kitchen chair beside Toby. Tessa still clung to Thomas, which was fine by him. Toby, I'm sorry for all of this, Thomas began. I had no idea that your father was gambling. I would have gotten him some help. Dad told me not to tell you. He said that you would turn him in, Toby admitted, which made Thomas feel guilty because that's exactly what he had done. I used to be a deputy before you were born, Toby. I'm not sure your parents told you about that, Thomas said. They said that you couldn't hack it at a man's job, Toby reluctantly explained. Not true. I was too good at my job. There was a shootout with a psycho that was holding his wife and kids hostage, and I shot him, Thomas revealed. Toby nodded. The guy didn't make it, Tessa softly asked as her hands began rubbing Thomas's back. No, Thomas softly replied. You know, I actually want children. Thomas, I want a house full of loud, messy children, Tessa blurted out. I want the spa to thrive, and I want us to grow old together. I want grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I will make sure that none of them ever gamble. I will also want to... Sonny, Thomas softly said, take a breath. Let me get you water. It was obvious that now that Tessa's near-death experience was over, she was thinking ahead. Thomas led his wife into a kitchen chair and quickly snatched 2 bottled waters from the fridge. Then he sat beside Tessa and grabbed her hand. All that she listed sounded wonderful. Except for the loud, messy children? His children were going to be organized and well-behaved, but he wasn't going to tell his wife that just yet. What now? Toby asked. A deputy will come by to bring you to the station for an interview. Would you like me to come? Thomas inquired. Toby glanced at Tessa and shook his head. Look after Aunt Tessa, in case Mom has more surprises for her, he insisted. Thomas's hand tightened on hers. He'd make sure that nothing ever happened to his wife. Okay, Thomas said. It didn't take long for Deputy Morris to return and usher Toby out of the house. Julia made her excuses and left next. After the door was locked, Thomas scooped his wife into his arms and carried her to bed. His head felt like it was about to explode, and he really needed a nap. Thomas pulled back the comforter and placed his wife into bed. He followed her, his body letting out a sigh of pleasure when it rested on the soft mattress. As soon as his head hit the pillow, Tessa shifted and rested her head on his chest. She let out a happy sigh. I can't believe that the crazy woman held me at gunpoint, she complained. Sally has always been greedy, Thomas noted. Clearly. I probably should have lied to her and told her that I would leave, but I was thinking only of stalling her. I guess my instincts were right, Tessa commented. They were, Thomas agreed. Is Toby going to live with us? Tessa asked. Sally does have a sister that will probably take him in. He will be happier there. He has cousins his age to play with, Thomas figured. You know I love you, right? Tessa demanded. I mean, it's common sense, since I wouldn't leave you when I was held at gunpoint. I love you too, Sonny, Thomas responded. If you didn't look so sick, I'd kiss you all over your body, Tessa whispered. I'll hold you to that, Thomas insisted, which made his Sonny laugh. I bet you will. Chapter 16. There are rules to visiting my father, Thomas announced as Tessa slipped into a blue, casual, off-the-shoulder dress. She would have worn shorts, but her poor husband would have blown a fuse. Rules? Tessa asked as she eyed the jewelry that was laid out on the vanity table that Thomas had built her. It had been 2 weeks since the madness with her lovely in-laws. Tripp was in jail, awaiting his trial since bail had been denied to him. Troy sang like a bird, turning in the 5 other Portum Island citizens in the gambling ring. Sally was currently in a maximum security prison. Since there were witnesses and she confessed to the police, Sally didn't see a point in fighting her charges. Besides, no one was willing to pay for her lawyer. As expected, her sister took custody of Toby, who visited as often as he liked. Sally pleaded guilty to attempted kidnapping with a deadly weapon and was given a hefty 30-year sentence. After that sentence was completed, she would go before a deportation board. They could decide to send her away from the island for eternity, though Tessa hoped that wasn't the case. Maybe Sally would be given the counseling that she needed. Maybe some time away would make Sally a better person. "Don't wear that," Thomas said as Tessa picked up a pair of studs that she had purchased for herself last week. She spun to tell Thomas that she could wear what she wanted when he handed her a box. "I saw these and thought that they would look beautiful on you." Tessa opened the box and saw beautiful diamond studs. Her eyes watered at the thoughtfulness. "You actually did something spontaneous," she squeaked before putting on the earrings. "It wasn't too spontaneous. I was planning on getting you something for this day. It's not every day that someone goes before the council and—" Tessa tossed her arms around Thomas and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was slow and sensual. Her tongue delved into his mouth, her body pressing against his. He wore his suit, which was quite frankly too much clothing for Tessa's taste. But she knew that Thomas had a plan to enact. She satisfied herself with the kiss, her body aching for more. Thomas clutched her to him, his arms providing warmth and safety. Their kiss ended when Thomas's phone alarm beeped. Tessa groaned and pulled away from him. She reapplied her lipstick before taking a tissue to delicately wipe her husband's mouth. He smiled at her before shutting off his phone alarm. "It's time to go, Tessa," Thomas eagerly said. "Right. Presentation, then your parents," Tessa listed, not excited by the prospect of fulfilling that agenda. She had a feeling that her in-laws were going to be far worse than Sally. It took 2 minutes for Tessa and Thomas to arrive at the administration building. Already a group of people were waiting to gain entrance to the council hall. Thomas grinned. "So far, so good," he whispered. "I hope that Emma's people don't find a seat." Tessa smirked as she remembered the tongue-lashing that Emma took at the ice cream shop some time ago. Tessa was glad that she and Julia had gotten to witness Esperanza lose her temper. "Esperanza finally grew a backbone and yelled at Emma," Tessa reported, which made Thomas shoot her a disapproving glance. "Really? When did this happen?" Thomas inquired. He was probably thinking of variables in his head. "When Julia and I went to the ice cream shop. I would have told you about it, but that's the night that you agreed to using the honey, and—" "That is enough, Tessa," Thomas said, a blush creeping up his face. Tessa decided not to push her husband, especially since his scheme would probably work. Tessa and Thomas sat in the front row alongside Kevin. Esperanza gave an emotional presentation, shedding a tear from time to time, although her words were delivered with more confidence. The councilman looked equally as bored. Well, okay, Esperanza's husband Asher was giving her moon eyes. Tessa couldn't tell what the outcome would be. She caressed her earrings, hoping that they would bring her good luck.
Mrs. Lawson, we will convene to vote on your proposal, the head councilman said. Tessa and Kevin followed Esperanza into the hallway. Tessa glanced at her friend, who was straight up crying by that point. Esperanza, you did well, Kevin said. Yeah, girl, it was better than your first presentation, Tessa assured. When Asher appeared, Esperanza jumped into his arms, burying her face into his neck. That display only made Tessa long to hold Thomas. Like the last time he had stayed behind. I love you, Esperanza said through her tears. I freaking love you. You're sad because you love me? Asher asked, sounding confused. No, you idiot, these are happy tears, Esperanza explained. I love you too, Asher said, his tone soft. By the way, the council approved your business. You will be assigned someone to help you start it up, he reported. Tessa squealed and Kevin hooted, but Esperanza clung to her man. We're going to let you take care of the crazy pregnant lady, Tessa suggested. Thankfully, Asher walked right out the door with Esperanza still wrapped around him. It wasn't long until Thomas walked out in the hallway. Damn, I need a wife, Kevin complained as Tessa ran to embrace her husband. Thomas held her close, a smile on his handsome face. Did you talk to Asher about getting a wife? Thomas asked after releasing Tessa. Yep, I'm on the list. Hopefully Cassandra finds me someone soon, Kevin said before leaving the building. Now let's go complete our less pleasant task of the day, Tessa suggested. Thomas nodded. Like I said, there are rules to this visit, Thomas said as he led Tessa up the porch steps of a small ranch house that needed a fresh paint job. What would they be? Tessa inquired. I don't go in, Thomas insisted. Sometimes Mom falls off the wagon and I don't go in. Okay, Tessa said with a sigh. Thomas rang the doorbell, and moments later the door opened. A tall, skinny man with scraggly black hair and a beard peppered with gray stepped out onto the porch. He wore a white tank shirt and blue checkered shorts. His feet were wrapped in a pair of white socks. He eyed Thomas with uncertainty. Your mother isn't here, the man warned his son. Is this your wife? Yes, Father, this is my wife, Tessa, Thomas confirmed. Seeing the exchange made Tessa hurt. She may think that her father was an entitled idiot, but at least she could still enter his house. It's nice to meet you, Tessa. I'm Greg, he said, not offering his hand or a smile. Hi, Greg, Tessa greeted. I take it that Mom's upset that Trip and Sally are in jail? Thomas guessed. She's more upset that you were the one that made the call. The gun wasn't really loaded. You could have let it go, Greg lectured, which pissed Tessa off. Do you know what Thomas didn't tell the police? He didn't tell the police that Trip poisoned him with weed killer. Luckily, since this stupid island does things, he survived the poisoning. And you know what? I didn't know that the gun was empty. Do you know how scary that was for me? Tessa nearly shouted. Look, Father, I get that you're upset that Trip was turned in, but he put our lives in danger. He should have known not to gamble, Thomas reasoned. He had no reason to gamble. I bought him the house and his job paid well. Sally wanted a horse, his father quietly said. She wanted a lot of things, Thomas. It hurts a man when he can't please his wife. I hope that you never have to suffer that fate. As for the weed killer, you are never going to die from that. Sally just wanted you to think that Tessa poisoned you. So you knew about that? Thomas coldly demanded. Of course I did. Trip was so filled with guilt that he told me what happened, his father revealed. And you think it's okay that they harmed me? Thomas coolly asked. Sally knew that you weren't gonna die? What's a headache, son? Either way, you shouldn't have called the cops. This was a family matter. Well, it seems like you have chosen a side. No matter what Tripp does, you make excuses for him. Thomas realized. His father frowned. Tripp is my son. I support my family, his father insisted. Yeah, you support your family as long as your family isn't named Thomas. Let's go, Tessa. I think that we're done here. Thomas decided. Shock filled his father's eyes. Tommy, don't be like that, his father begged. But Thomas stepped away from him. I can't have a relationship with you until you decide to stop making excuses for Tripp, he said before he turned his back on his father. Tessa took his hand and they walked away. Her heart was breaking for Thomas. She couldn't fathom a world where a son was not even welcomed into his parents' home. We aren't going back there anymore, Thomas softly told Tessa. She gently squeezed his hand. I know, baby. I know. Epilogue. 10 years later. Tessa shoved her hair into the hairnet and let out a curse. She couldn't believe that she had volunteered to bake brownies for her daughter Joy's bake sale. She let out a curse as running footsteps alerted her to the fact that her son Finn was up from his nap. Mommy, up! Finn shouted as he tore into the kitchen. Tessa spun to see a dark-haired 4-year-old running at her legs. She lifted him into her arms and he wrapped his arms around her neck. Where is Daddy? He's at work, Tessa responded. Work. The spa was booked solid for a month. Thankfully, there were 3 other massage therapists who were happy to see back-to-back clients. She helped with the clerical side of things and still did massages whenever it suited her. But having 3 kids took up a lot of time. Dan says that we're rich. He can just stay home with us, Finn decided. Yes. Thomas and Tessa were not hurting financially, but Thomas enjoyed teaching. She didn't think that he would retire anytime soon. Remember what Daddy says about money, Finn? Tessa gently asked. She made a mental note that she would have a talk with her second eldest, Dan, later. He couldn't think that just because his parents had money that he was better than everyone. She tried to ensure that her children were well-rounded and gave to the community. That's why, on a Friday afternoon, she was going to bake a few dozen brownies for Joy's bake sale. The proceeds would be given to the orphanage. Tessa and Thomas did donate to the orphanage regularly, but she felt that it was nice to encourage the children to help out. Maybe Dan should start giving back. You are going to spoil him, Sonny, Thomas complained as he walked through the door, followed by Joy, age 9, and Dan, age 7. Joy had Tessa's red hair, while Dan was the spitting image of his father. I love being spoiled, Finn declared. Tessa pressed her nose to the top of her son's head. Hey, Mini-Me and Squirt, how are you both? Tessa teased. Mom, are you starting the brownies? Joy excitedly asked. Yes, Tessa said. I am starting the brownies. Thomas, can you pick up a pizza? Sure, Thomas said, smiling at Tessa. I'll also order a salad. Fine by me, Tessa agreed. They learned to compromise. Mommy, can I play with Junior? Dan inquired. Julia and Kendrick had one child, Kendrick Jr. He was a year older than Dan, and the boys enjoyed spending time together. After you do your homework, Tessa said. Dan smiled largely and ran up the stairs. Come on, Finn, Mom needs to work, Joy scolded. Finn squirmed, so Tessa put him down. Joy took his hand and they left the room. Thomas rubbed his forehead. I ran into Mother today, Thomas grudgingly admitted. Really? Tessa asked, surprised. Thomas's mother had come around when Tessa began popping out the grandkids, but it didn't mean that the relationship with Thomas's parents improved. Well, Thomas's mother began taking her sobriety seriously, and his father stopped blaming him for Tripp's imprisonment.
What did she want? Tessa inquired, curious.
The usual, for me to visit Tripp in prison, Thomas responded.
Do you want to?
Tessa inquired. No, Sonny. I think Tripp is where he belongs, Thomas said. He stepped close to Tessa and tenderly cupped her face. His eyes were intense, and after all this time, she still got butterflies. I love you, Sonny, he told her.
I love you too, Tom, Tessa said, before brushing her lips against his. This has been Theresa, Bride's Dock on Portum Island, Book 2. Written by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Bethany Kay. Copyright 2020 by Debbie Civil. Production copyright by Debbie Civil.